What's up, everybody? You're listening to the Hidden Path Podcast, brought to you by GodlikeProductions.com. I'm your host, Resonance Rich. It's Saturday night, September 8th, 2018. I hope you're all having a great evening, and you're nice and cozy next to a warm fire, or the warm glow of your computer screen, or maybe just your smartphone's microwave signal. Some of you might be asking, what is GodlikeProductions.com? Well, it's a website that's set up in the format of a community forum. It has thousands of users. It gets millions of views. The community is used to discuss all kinds of things, from current events, like what's happening in the world, to some of the more harder to find topics like far-out conspiracies dealing with the realities that have the hallmarks of high strangeness, hence the name The Hidden Path. Far out, man. You know, I'm not sure about you, but when I wake up in the morning, I go to check my news for the day. I don't go to places like CNN. I don't go to places like the New York Times. I go to places like GLP, Godlike Productions. I find the information I get from places like GLP, it usually contains more of the truth, less of the censorship, and I usually hear breaking news on GLP before the news hears it themselves. You know, so instead of quote-unquote experts and special interests that control megalithic news corporations, I prefer to hear what it is that my fellow crazy normal people are talking about. That's you. Yes, you. Because we're live from the psych ward. Places like this, they need your support. I'd encourage you to check it out. If you haven't, or if you're already a member, I'd encourage you to support them by purchasing a premium membership. And, you know, it's something worth fighting for, to have places that aren't controlled, that aren't censored, you know, somewhat. It's vital to our freedom to discuss things amongst ourselves. And speaking of which, we have Stryker on the line, and he's here to discuss some things with me. How you doing, Stryker?
Good morning, Richard.
Oh, yeah, good morning to you, too. Where are you? Where's it morning?
I am in L.A. getting ready to start my day. I start my day at midnight.
That's right. Stryker's coming from us from Los Angeles. Now, I was going to ask you, you know, we all know about California moving to paint the roads white. Have you seen any of that? Are you seeing any roads white? No?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, that's kind of old news, but I thought I'd check up with you on that. You know, they started painting the roads white for the climate control.
Yeah, I heard about that, and I've been, I travel the roads a lot around here, and been hoping to run across one, but I haven't seen one.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of weird.
What's your thoughts on that, as far as
on
changing the roads from black to white?
Well, I'm not a believer in global warming or
whatever,
climate change, whatever you want to call it.
Well, it's changes a little bit from day to day, but you don't believe in the whole man-made climate change thing, right?
No, sir.
Yeah.
I mean, not when there's, you know, so many volcanoes out there doing the same thing that we're being accused of.
Yeah.
So,
well, you know, that's kind of like the whole thing, this whole controversy with Joe Rogan and Elon Musk. You know, Elon Musk was saying, oh, well, you know, we keep dumping CO2 into the atmosphere, and it's going to do bad things. And, oh, let me get that joint real quick. Let me take a hit of that. But, yeah, let's go back to that. Yeah. It is something we can see. We don't like smog. Speaking of smog, is there a lot of smog in L.A.?
Since I've been back, I've been traveling to the 11 western states for the last 30-something plus years, and since I've been back, it hasn't bothered me.
Yeah, do you think
Colorado,
you were there?
It's more an issue.
Yeah, you were there years ago, right? Maybe, 15, 20 years ago?
I left after the Northridge earthquake.
Northridge earthquake, okay. When was that?
Yeah. God, I forget. I think it's 91 or something like that, but that's not what scared me off. It was a carjacking at a place called AMPM. My wife and kid got carjacked. Next thing I know, I'm traveling the country trying to escape L.A.
Yeah. How long ago was that, do you think?
It's probably 91.
91, yeah. So back then, do you think the smog was worse than it is now, or do you think has it improved since then?
Well,
is it hard to tell? It's kind of a day-by-day thing, maybe?
Yeah, I really haven't noticed it. I mean, since I've been back, and like I said, I drive at night, so congestion isn't really an issue.
Right. Yeah.
I could still see buildings if that's what you're concerned with.
No, well, I was just wondering how it would compare. Because it seemed like we heard a lot about smog years ago, but not so much today. Yeah. That's what I was interested in. If you thought it had improved since then or not, but.
Yeah, I haven't even heard people talking about smog since I've been back. It's kind of weird. It's weird that you bring that up because, I remember.
Well, it's kind of like the sun, right? People say the sun never used to be as white as it is now. That's another thing. They say it used to be yellow. Back when I was a kid, the sun was yellow, damn it.
When I was a kid, just like the Russians, I was told not to look at those things.
Oh,
yeah. You know how that goes.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too, is don't look at the sun, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, a lot of people say that it used to be yellow. It wasn't so white. That our sun has definitely changed. It's becoming far more intense. I've heard stories of people that take care of yachts for a living, that wax yachts, big, large boats, that, they have to do it more often now because of the sun. It's so much more intense. And we're seeing that with a lot of people that follow, these infrared rays that are coming out of the sun, a lot more intense heat, a lot more intensity from the sun overall. So... maybe painting the streets white isn't such a bad idea, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. Could it be the chemicals that are escaping into our oceans?
Yeah, well, that's a big one. I mean, that's like Fukushima, right?
I mean, like I said, I was told never to look at the sun, so I never really notice it. But you look at water and look at the stuff that's escaping into our water systems. I mean, the EPA is doing.
Well, yeah, it's turning the frogs gay, first of all, but
yeah. Remember the deal up in Colorado? What was that, the San Juan River?
Yeah,
where the EPA.
Oh yeah, was that mining? Had something to do with the mining?
Industry? Yeah. They were trying to fill up these mines, and they ended up having a blowout.
Yeah.
And just polluted the rivers, and in turn, I think they tried to offer the Native Americans along the river like $1,000.
$1,000 each. Or
yeah, $1,000.
Like, here's $1,000. Shut your mouth.
Yeah.
Go back home.
Yeah, ruin their agriculture and everything, and
yeah, didn't the river churn a certain color or something?
Yeah, it was orange.
Yeah, it turned orange.
Poison all along the river.
That is right. I forgot all about that.
It's just funny how it's okay for the EPA to do things like that. I mean,
well, what do you mean by the EPA?
Wow. Well, they were responsible for the spill. I mean, there was a guy up there. I forget what his name was, but he tried over and over again for like a year, paying his own money for putting news articles about what they were doing up there and how they were doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And I mean, he told them exactly what would happen, and they just ignored it. And sure enough, you get a blowout.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the problem too when you have government agencies like the EPA. There's always whenever there's big money involved, corruption is right there. It's nearby. So, I mean, how many palms do you have to grease in order to, hey, I could save a little money dumping this stuff, into this river right here instead of, that got me thinking about, like, the Coors plant in Denver. I think they make most of their Coors beer with a special aquifer they have access to or something, right? So it's like they're churning a lot of that fresh water into Coors beer, which I'm not against, okay? I'm not.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. It's just an interesting observation one makes.
Yeah, I don't know what the name of that stream is that they're getting it out of.
Yeah, some kind of aquifer that comes from Idaho. Speaking of beer, what are you drinking tonight, my friend?
I am drinking coffee, like I said.
You're drinking coffee? Okay.
Yes, sir. it's my morning, so my morning starts at midnight.
Yeah, it's usually my morning too. I'm a night owl. Like a lot of these guys in the stream here, I see them all talking. Oh, the Denver airport. This guy Phoenix, he just brought up the Denver airport. You been to that place?
Oh yeah, plenty of times. I used to work at the old Stapleton, building modular homes after they got rid of Stapleton.
Stapleton, is that is that a town or?
That was the original. That was the original airport.
Okay, that was the first airport. Yeah. See, they said they built a new airport, and they didn't even need to build a new airport. Would you think that was correct?
I think it's nicer where they got it. It's kind of odd. I mean, the whole thing's made out of canvas and it's tornado proof and just kind of an odd thing there. But I think it's more efficient.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot bigger. It's out there in that wide open area.
But there's that spooky horse that they got out front. I don't know what that's all about.
The giant blue horse with the red eyes.
It's like
that will make you want to bring your tomato plants inside. Just looking at that alone, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's why is that part of the horseman that the Bible talks about?
Yeah.
So the evil one.
Well, we're going to have Ted on later. Renaissance Ted. He was talking about this last week about
yes, I do.
All that land that they built that new airport on is owned by the Queen or the royal family from England. So that's kind of interesting.
Really, out there in
Denver,
the new airport there?
Yeah, the new Denver International Airport. Yeah.
What is it? Yeah, DIA. I was trying to figure out the name. I can't remember the name. It's like, what the hell's the name of that place? You've been by it so many times.
Yeah. You've been seeing any high strangeness out there in Los Angeles? Any kind of crazy-looking chemtrails or UFOs or swamp creatures or maybe just Nancy Pelosi stumbling down the street or something? Huh?
No, but I do see a lot of wicked things.
Do you?
The difference between the homeless people out here and the certain craziness and stuff. You can tell who's crazy and who's faking and stuff like that. But there's some crazy, like demonic type people out there.
And they're in L.A., obviously, you're talking about, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you give me an example? Are you talking about something you've seen recently, or?
Yeah, but like this morning, I had a shoplifter come to a store, just about cut my head off trying to steal some potato chips. But what was weird about it, I kept having this feeling like she was trying to get into my truck and stuff. She turned and looked at me. And she was a colored lady, and she turned and looked at me, and her eyes were white. Really?
Just totally white. What time was this at?
This was about 7 in the morning. So I got a real good look at her, but kind of just made me stand back. Ooh, I don't know. Go ahead, do whatever you got to do to my truck. I'll be fine without it. So,
well, do you believe in possession at all? Demonic possession, like the Vatican has talked about a lot. We need exorcists. We need more people that exorcism is a much needed thing.
I don't know if I really. I think we just got a lot of crazy people out there, which this country has managed to fail thanks to JFK. JFK?
What are you talking about?
Yes, sir. Well, he's the one who kind of banned the whole.
Well, JFK got his head blown off. What do you mean?
Yeah, but his sister had a lobotomy done, and he just went all out war against the institutions to put these crazy people away.
Whoa.
And, to get them help. I do believe that back then it was probably pretty bad, but with time, whenever you start something new, it's going to be rocky, and there's going to be some crazy stuff that's going on and stuff, but with time and, as we work things out, it's better.
Yeah.
But
so
I think we've stepped back and made a turn for the worst.
Oh, okay. Well, you don't think this whole Trump situation, how we got Trump in there, and you can see the battle going on between good and evil, or what you might perceive as good and evil, you don't think that might bring us to a better place? You think it's all heading downhill?
No, I actually didn't vote for Trump. I'm a Ted Cruz person.
Yeah.
Which ultimately I ended up
Lion Ted.
Third party.
Lion Ted.
What? Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna say Lion Stryker.
No, I said Lion Ted, not you, Stryker.
Oh, okay. You're talking about Ted Cruz. Yeah.
Lion Ted. He puts the Bible up high, then he lies, right? Or puts it down. Yeah. Whatever it is.
Yes.
I'm sure there's a lot of people that was for Ted Cruz, a lot of people for Gary Johnson, a lot of people for Hillary Clinton, but there's a lot of people that weren't for anybody. They see it all as crazy and, kind of insane a little bit.
I think with Ted Cruz, what I really, really liked about him, not really the Bible stuff, was his stance on immigration. He wasn't shy. I mean, if somebody had come to one of his rallies or something like that was an illegal immigrant and asked about, well, what are you going to do about my parents and stuff, he flat out tell them, hey, you broke the law. You're going home.
Yeah. Well,
your parents broke the law, and that's the law and the rule of the land. And, Mexico
I think
itself has a border on the other side.
Yeah, but I think you can agree with me that throughout our lives, it's always been politicians saying one thing to get in office, and then it's a whole different story once they're in office. And Ted Cruz, he seems like a good guy for the most part, I guess, but he's a politician. That was the one thing that set Trump aside. And I'm not saying, Trump's going to take us to the wonderland. I hope things do get better in America, but, we all got to stay a little, we got to use discernment, right?
Well, I mean, if I look back at that election and look at the way that Trump handled it and all the other, besides Ted Cruz, immigration part, Ted Cruz never sugarcoated it.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, he could have gotten to office and did a different thing, but during the campaign, he didn't sugarcoat nothing. He flat out told these people, you're going home. and that's what needed to be done.
Okay, so
I couldn't believe it.
Since we're talking about that going home, how is the immigration, I guess I would say, situation there in Los Angeles? How does it see? You probably see a lot of people, I would say, you could point out and say, yeah, they're most definitely illegal immigrants, right?
I don't really see it that much. Honestly, I see it more with my family. My family's from the Netherlands, so
okay.
My own mother got scared, thought Trump was going to send her away. And
really?
Like, no, Mom, you don't understand. You paid your taxes and you did well. You got a pension.
Well, how old's your mom?
And that's what
your mom's.
She's 80 now.
She's 80, right? She's probably a citizen of, right?
She just Donald Trump had made her a citizen, which is great.
Okay.
She renounced her citizenship in Europe or in Holland, and which was last year. I was very proud of her. She got through, and but she did. It's a total misunderstanding with Donald Trump. It's like, hey, he's flat out telling you, and it's been truthful. You pay your taxes, you do your thing. It's like when he touched on the whole Western Union thing, how he was going to go after Western Union because he knew what what they were doing. They're sending money back through Western Union, so he was going to tax tax the hell out of it. And,
right.
well, that money stays here, which should happen.
What are your thoughts on the whole? Like today, we had seen something on Godlike Productions. Somebody had posted. Sorry if I don't have your name, but somebody had posted that Seth Rich might still be alive and could be in witness protection. Did you hear about that?
Seth Rich.
Do you know Seth Rich? No, don't know about Seth Rich.
Sorry, it's all right.
It's all right.
I turned my TV off.
Well, we all try to turn our TV off.
No.
Absolutely.
I pulled the cable. I pulled the local channels.
You're like, I've had enough of this MK Ultra CIA spook crap, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if I could give anybody advice out there, turn off your TV. Don't even listen to it anymore.
That's great advice. But what about this? What about the smartphone? You have a smartphone. Isn't that like a little handheld TV?
Yeah. You're right. And it does draw me in.
But we have more control of it, right? It's not like a television. You got what? I got 100 channels and there's nothing on. Isn't that the saying all the time?
Yeah, but I mean, back in the day, I mean, besides listening to the news, I could turn on Seinfeld and walk away from TV after a half hour. So
yeah.
Now I turn on that damn cell phone. I could be on it for 3 hours easy.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But what's good about the cell phone? You know, place venues like what you guys have going on here.
Yeah.
You know, we that choice, which is good. You know, like I said, you do have more control, which is good.
Right.
I do like that.
Yeah, so you can go to places like GLP. You go to GLP much? Godlike Productions? You should check it out, man.
I just introduced into it.
Yeah.
This past year, you and I have been doing a lot of spiritual searching. And,
that's right.
And
searching for the truth. Speaking of which, we should go over that a little bit.
Okay.
You were just talking about something about we were going into the whole pine tree thing, the symbology of pine cones, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
It's crazy because you know, whenever you and I touch on a topic, it just opens up a large variety of things, and next thing you know, because you and I are just talking about pine cones and the pineal gland.
The pineal gland, right?
Yeah. Next thing I know, we're going into 9/11.
Yeah, which is where I wanted to go with this.
Yeah.
There's a guy in the chat right now. He says, "You're all slaves to your smartphones," in all caps. He might have something about that. He might.
Well, you know, you're probably right. It makes me money, and you know, without my smartphone, I couldn't make a living.
Yeah,
I think. Well, I don't think I'm a slave to.
Well, it helps, but
yeah, yeah, exactly.
But
I'm more of a slave to the guy who has the money.
Yeah, that's true. Back to the pine tree thing. You know, I think what I stumbled upon was I was starting to think about Christmas. You know. I started thinking about Christmas. Well, Christmas is our time we set aside to celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ, and it's just so many odd things. I mean, Frosty the Snowman, Santa Claus is, you know, that's a whole nother podcast. But just started thinking about the Christmas tree. You know, we bring this pine tree into our house. We, you know, chop down that tree, bring it in here. We bring it in, and it's the one tree that, you know, doesn't drop any foliage in the fall, which fall could be symbolic as the fall of mankind from Eden, maybe. And it does seem weird. And then we got a lot of pine cone, you know, symbology, or like the Vatican's got a giant statue of a pine cone. And a lot of the Pope's staffs that he holds, they have little pine cones. There's pine cones in the Egyptian hieroglyphs. Pine cones in all kinds of, even ancient Indian, I think it's Indian architecture.
Do we have pine trees in Egypt? I don't think so, do we?
I don't know what they had back then, but the hieroglyphs shows them holding something that resembles a pine cone. So you see that in all this ancient, you know, in these ancient carvings and these ancient pictures, we see a lot of that, and it's all kind of, I don't know, a little mysterious.
I think I got somewhat of an answer for why you would probably see that in Egypt. I think Egypt had something to do with discovering how to do autopsies, and like they were one of the first to start doing autopsies and dissecting the body and different parts of the body.
Okay.
And then that's probably where you get that third eye thing and
yeah, well, we've seen things on the internet where it shows the picture of the pineal gland when you open the brain up, and it looks like the eye of Horus. So maybe you could be onto something there. Definitely.
Well, it's also said that it does react like a real eye. It can take in light and all that. And,
well, it is kind of a mysterious organ. It's different, like the brain's.
Yeah.
The brain's a mirror. It's got the same kind of things on either hemisphere, but the pineal gland is the one thing that sits in the middle. But I know, like, I think I've read that certain birds, their pineal gland is actually somewhat of an eye, an optical, sensory.
Yeah.
That it does take in some light, and they think that's what our pineal gland does. When the light goes low, it starts to produce melatonin or whatnot to help us go to sleep.
Yes.
But yeah, a lot of
the body is a strange, mystical thing. So,
body is a wonderland. Who sings that song?
Yes. yeah. It's.
So tell us about the September 11th thing. Tell us about that.
Well, as I say, I got in. You got me into the pine cone thing. So as I was searching and stuff, where you could target on your pine cone and keep going, and next thing I know, I'm wandering off into this 9/11.
Yeah,
thing,
9/11.
That a guy on YouTube.
What's
his name? Rob.
Yeah, well, that's the thing I wasn't sure about. Was I never really looked into why 9/11. I always thought the importance of 9/11 was because it was 9/11, right? That's 911. That's emergency, right? That's just what I thought. But tell us your theory, or what you might have stumbled upon from this other guy and heard about.
Yes. Yeah. Well, see, 9/11 is. It came to the conclusion that 9/11 actually represents the actual birth of Jesus Christ, and that was the whole incident of 9/11 had taken so many hours to accomplish, and what he came up with was that the planets and the stars all lined up the same on that day, as when Jesus Christ was born.
Yeah.
And
9/11
is actually a day that we're supposed to be preparing for the return of Jesus Christ. Not like everybody thinks it's Christmas, but it's not.
So you feel that the proper celebration of Jesus Christ's birthday is to prepare for his second coming, not presents under the tree and should I get a PlayStation or an Xbox? Biggest question.
That's what Christmas is supposed to be about. Somehow we've gotten into this
very materialistic, definitely.
This consumer world and stuff. I mean, you, as far as I could trace Santa Claus back to the Netherlands again, and that.
He goes back to the North Pole.
I don't know about that. The Netherlands had Santa Claus that would go around.
Well, like they're saying in the chat here now, somebody mentioned pagan trees. I mean, there is a lot of pagan symbolical, I guess, idols surrounding these. I mean, just look at Easter. That's a weird one, but Christmas is definitely filled with it. A lot of singing magic songs and stuff, Frosty the Snowman, he came to life. He's got a magic hat and he's running around. The kids are, it's all fun and games though. When you
wrapped up,
well, you tell other people about this and they're like, "Oh, you're just out there, man. This is just fun and games. It's just for fun, just for the kids." Yeah, until the kids realize it's not real. Then what happens?
Never mind that you're actually preaching to Satan or what have you.
Yeah, well, Santa's pretty close to Satan. I mean, it's about spot
on.
Well,
that's what I mean. I mean, if you go back to the Santa Claus that was in Holland, and what he was doing was taking bad kids and turning them into slaves.
Yeah.
And it was.
Well, yeah. Then you got Krampus. You got the whole Krampus thing. But I mean, it's always been a mystery. Just to look at that, and people will trace it back to, this was old Saint Nick. He was a saint, and I don't try so much look at that. I just look at what it is now, and it's kind of odd. Like Easter, the day we celebrate Jesus rose from the dead. We got a bunny. We got a bunny laying eggs, and eggs that have candy, and the kids are constant. I mean, yeah, that's weird, right? I mean, how many Coors Lights would you have to drink to come up with something that unique, as far as an idea of celebration in that kind of fashion? It's just weird. It's bizarre. It's odd. Very odd.
Yeah. What we turn things into, it's nuts.
So September 11th could be the actual day that Jesus was born.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. During the time this whole thing was orchestrated, according to this source that I came across, was that during those hours, those were the hours that Mary was in labor.
3 hours.
And it was something like 3 to 8. I can't remember exactly. Because I was still kind of like trying to discover what this pine cone thing was about that you're trying to tell me about.
Definitely. That's a rabbit hole of its own.
Yeah. So, and the way I look at it is the Muslims compared to us Christians here in the United States is they do have more knowledge on what happened.
The Muslims?
I do believe they, obviously, I mean, they're more steadfast in the way they pray.
Well, they're definitely.
Like I mean, sometimes I envy them. I mean, when you're
don't envy the radical ones who look to. Like,
no. What I mean is
because that's the whole debate is that they have a lot of different stories about the way things happen. But some of them, some of the details that they change are kind of important details. And then you got the whole Muhammad thing and infidels, and if you're not going to join, you got to die, and that's not.
Well, I think what I'm trying to say, I envy their dedication. That.
Well, we're pretty dedicated, man.
They are.
Hey, we're pretty dedicated. Let me tell you. No. We spend a vast amount of money on Christmas. Let me tell you. You know how much money I spent last year on Christmas? And the year before that? We're talking. That's dedication. Let me tell you. We will spend all year planning on it.
Yeah. You're definitely right there. So,
yeah.
It's.
Well, that would be interesting if the September 11th actually is the day Jesus Christ was born, because that would mean what do we celebrate? We don't celebrate September 11th. Well, it's a day where we look at a bad thing happening. It's a bad day, If you see a plane flying low on that day, you might, run under a building or something.
Yeah. Well, what this guy was saying was, that September 11th and the time, that was the day that the planets and the stars had lined up exactly the same way as when Christ was born.
Yeah, right.
And that would be the actual day of Christ's birth.
Yeah, that would be something else. I'll have to look into that. Maybe somebody on Godlike Productions could do a little more research on that subject.
Yeah. Maybe
they could. We got a lot of smart people over there. I'll tell you what. They bring up stuff sometimes. I'm just like, wow.
Yeah. I'm just finding out that myself in the last few years.
Yeah.
So, seek and you shall find, and we've been asleep for too long.
That's the truth, man. Definitely.
I could easily say I've been asleep all my life.
Yeah, I think we're all trying to wake up. Definitely. They had an article on here today about this asteroid that came real close to us. Did you hear about that? There's an asteroid the size of an office building that whipped by us this weekend. Actually, it could be flying by right now. I'm not sure, but in between us and the moon, it was really close. I didn't even hear about that anywhere else until I got on Godlike Productions, man. This post by Alluvial. Shout out to Alluvial for that one. But yeah, I mean, some of the information, like you said, you're asleep, you've been waking up, slowly seeking the truth. A lot of my truth seeking has been, these type of websites like GLP, where, you know, you can talk about stuff like that or listen to stuff about that kind of thing and, you know, not be called a conspiracy theorist or a crazy crackpot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well, that's really good. I'll have to look into that more. I don't know much about that September 11th thing, but I'm glad you brought it up because it's an interesting theory.
Yeah, it's definitely mind-blowing when somebody throws that in there. And,
yeah.
You know,
you ever see any kind of the elite driving around there in Los Angeles? You ever see, like, limousines with Illuminati type characters? You ever see any celebrities out there? Celebrities. Have you seen?
Yeah.
What kind of celebrities have you run into out there?
Since I've been back, I think I ran into one of the guys from Friends at a famous chicken place called El Pollo Loco.
El Pollo Loco? Isn't that a Breaking Bad restaurant? Yeah, that's on Breaking Bad, isn't it?
Probably.
Yeah, it is.
Probably.
I think so.
Yeah.
Somebody from
Friends?
Friends?
Late at night. Yeah.
Really? Is this Joey? It's Joey.
Yeah, Joey.
Oh my gosh,
Joey.
that guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
What did he look like? Did he look rough?
He was pretty old.
Pretty old. Well, who just passed away? I think it was
Burt Reynolds.
Burt Reynolds, that's right. He just passed away.
Burt.
He was getting up there. Some of these guys are really old. Like Sylvester Stallone, he's pretty damn old. I think he's in his 70s. It's like,
yeah.
So Joey, you seen Joey there, huh? Are you sure it was him?
Oh, I'm positive.
Did you get all starstruck? Did you go up and see?
No. I've been around them enough back in the '80s to where you realize these are just normal people. That, just trying to earn a living.
Well, they sure have.
Except for the fact that they, a lot of them get on that whole Democratic horse.
Oh yeah, they sure got an opinion.
That's right, yeah.
Gosh.
It's like going to a Ted Nugent concert one week and then going to Queensryche the next, and it's like, oh my God. I'd much rather listen to Ted Nugent all day than listen to some guy from Canada tell us what's wrong with our country and George Bush.
Who's that? Some guy from Canada. Who are you talking about?
Queensryche, the band Queensryche.
Oh.
Like, hey, you know what? You don't even live in this country. So,
ooh, ouch.
Take your high horse and go someplace else with it, I mean.
Yeah. Who did you used to run into back in the day back there? Did you say it was Ronnie James Dio? Was that?
Yeah, Ronnie used to have like a community garden around the corner from his house. He'd stop by, and I think he had some vegetables in the garden and stuff
community
like that.
Garden? Oh.
Yeah. He'd be involved in that. When I first walked by his house, it's kind of weird because, just on the other side of Ventura, you got like Beverly Hills and mansions and stuff like that. Ronnie James Dio just lived in a regular type house.
Yeah.
And I remember I asked him one day, I said, well, why don't you live over there with Michael Jackson and stuff like that? He brought up Bob Dylan, Pat Benatar, and Tom Petty. And he's all, have you seen how many people are sitting in front of Bob Dylan's house right now? And, well, yeah, every day you go by, there'd be at least 400 people in front of his house waiting for Bob Dylan to come out. Yeah, well, I'm probably exaggerating, but, same thing with Michael Jackson.
Yeah. Well, they do hand out
every single day.
They hand out those maps to the stars things out there, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, you can go and check out this house, so-and-so.
Yeah, that's sort of a different area, more like the Brentwood area.
Yeah.
Where they do that kind of stuff. On our side, we had, like I said, Michael Jackson, Pat Benatar, Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Who was that big guy, speaking of Burt Reynolds? I always forget his name. He's the Italian guy, the big fat guy. What was his name?
From what?
Like Smokey in the Bandit movies.
Oh, was he the cop guy? The sheriff?
No. He was like, always like played a goofy chef or something like that.
Oh, okay.
I forget his name.
I don't know.
I think one of his kids played on that show, 21 Jump Street or something like that. But anyways, on this side of the valley, it's more just regular down to earth actors and musicians and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, if you think about how these people sit outside of these celebrities' houses, it almost, they're kind of idols in a way. They're kind of being worshipped. I mean, not kind of, pretty much being worshipped. Yeah. I mean, they are idols. And it's just so funny that their opinions are posted all over, the mainstream media. Like, oh, hey, by the way, this is what so-and-so, Robert De Niro, thinks about your president. It's like, I don't even know Robert De Niro. I know the guy he pretends to be in front of the camera, but I don't know who the hell he is. What does he do in his spare time? I don't know.
Yeah, and then slowly but surely we're starting to find out that these guys are child molesters and things like that. It's like,
a guy said here, Jackie Gleason. Does that sound familiar?
Oh, yeah.
Or Dom DeLuise?
Dom DeLuise. Yes.
Dom DeLuise. Yes. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you. Yes.
Helping our memory out here. Yes.
Yeah.
Dom DeLuise. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. He was. Like I said, actors like that were more on my side. I live on the west side of the valley. Grew up there.
Yeah. Did you run into him at any time? Why did you bring him up?
Oh, well, just like I said, those were the type of people that were on the side of the valley. And then
okay,
you go,
more real.
More real, down to earth people. And Nikki Sixx of Motley Crue lived on Havenhurst. Just regular houses, just regular guys that you could walk up to and approach and stuff like that. I also went to school with the Kirk Cameron and Candace Cameron. They were very down to earth people. With a lot of the cast from Little House on the Prairie down there. Oh,
Little House on the Prairie, man.
Yeah. And then you get into the Brentwood place. That's where you get all the opinionated actors and stuff like that.
Snobs.
You just want to, exactly.
What's
just avoid them people.
Let me ask you, what's your feelings on these celebrities? Most of them, a lot of them, I guess the more famous types being under some kind of MK Ultra mind control and having handlers, and some of these weird things like Tom Cruise. He's into the Scientology thing, and he's got people that handle him. Do you think that might be the case with a lot of them, that they are under some kind of traumatic based control used initially by the CIA, and that they're just like dancing puppets for the public to give us their opinion when our opinion needs to be shifted a certain way?
It's kind of weird because when that whole Scientology thing came out and people started reaching out for it and stuff, I just thought it was weird. But at the same time, I got mixed up into a type of Buddhism that Tina Turner was involved in, and we weren't allowed to ask questions. It was kind of strange.
Really?
And then I ended up being a Buddhist, but not that kind of Buddhist.
Well, what's that kind of Buddhist?
Well, I mean, like I said, if you had questions, it was basically, if you need to ask questions, then you don't need to be here, type thing. And it's like, how do I know what I'm saying here? I'm chanting to a piece of paper.
Yeah.
What's on this paper?
You'd be like the guys that work at Amazon. It's that article that just came out from Amazon. The warehouses, they do these weird chants. What do they chant? Yeah. Prime, Amazon Prime, before they start their shift. And they're like slaves.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was just reading this article about Amazon and the Florida hurricanes that have been coming out. And
this new one, Florence, it's coming out. Isn't it still a Category 4? What are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is, but a case of water was going for like $1.23. Well, with these hurricanes that are coming out of Amazon was raising their prices to like $20 a case or more. And it's like, why are we dealing with these people that take advantage of airport? You could buy an airplane ticket on a certain airline. I'm not going to say the airline for $123. Well, today that same ticket is $3,000. What's
wow.
going on here?
Yeah.
I
think it's just funny how everybody thinks that Jeff Bezos, is the richest guy in the world. I don't think that's quite true. Do you?
Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos, he's the CEO of Amazon. He's the owner, founder of Amazon. They say, well, he's worth a lot of money, probably 60 to 80 billion, something like that. And he's the richest guy in the world, right? But I mean, what about the royal family in England, or the Rothschilds, or the Rockefellers? Is there any of them left over that still have money? I wonder. I don't know.
Well,
Amazon's got to sell that high-priced water to keep Jeff Bezos rolling. Man, that guy's rolling.
That's right. Well, as long as he doesn't get on Rogan and smoke pot, he'll be fine.
Poor Elon Musk. Oh.
Yeah, I do. I feel bad for the guy. I feel it.
Do you
I'm
feel
not
bad?
a pot man, but yeah. I mean, it's legal.
That just goes to show not even Elon Musk can smoke pot without catching shit.
Yeah.
In a state in California where you are, right? I don't know where Joe Rogan's studio is. It's probably close to where you're at. But
you say it was something like Burbank, right?
He's probably down in Burbank, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's only about 5 miles from here.
Yeah, so I mean, he's just down in California where it's recreationally legal to smoke marijuana, and he's smoking, and he's a billionaire. And the next day, it's like, oh, he's catching so much shit. Yeah, I felt bad for him too a little bit, but he's pretty rich. I think he's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how you bring up Rogan because, like I said, I haven't really opened my eyes to all this new stuff, and you're bringing up the name Rogan a lot, and I'm all like, wait a minute, isn't that dude that wasn't he on like Fear Factor?
Yeah,
something?
he hosted Fear Factor.
What are you talking about? And stuff. And I mean, I remember him from Fear Factor, and then he was some kind of comedian for a little bit, and then now he's like this guy who does shows like this.
Yeah, he started as a stand-up comedian, and he's pretty good at, just shooting the shit with people like we're doing now. We're trying our best here. I don't have any pot for you to smoke, though. I don't know if you have any, but you better not do it, because next day we'll get on GLP, and you'll be getting roasted. They're going to roast you.
Yeah.
It's kind of split down the middle with GLP on pot, I think. Some people are into it. Some people are like, don't like it. I don't know. What's your feelings?
Well, my feeling is the type of work I do is I'm on the understanding that I'm not allowed to touch that. So
yeah,
I just don't even venture into that area.
Well, that's because but I mean that's because you work in a safety-sensitive work environment, right? Yeah.
Yes.
But
which I like.
Yeah. Well, our politicians don't even get drug tested. That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Exactly.
Well, they're.
Oh.
I don't know. I think they're in a safety-sensitive environment too.
You go back to John McCain and the final months that he was in office and stuff, and you're like, what's he doing there? I mean, my wife passed away from brain cancer, and it's like, why is this guy talking when I know damn well what brain cancer does to you? Why is he making decisions for you?
Because he probably gets the best of the best treatment. Probably gets that treatment that actually works.
I said to myself, if that guy lives and survives, and watching my wife go so quickly was, I'd have been really pissed, because I have some family members that are tied in with the government there in Minnesota, and they had taken a plane. They still travel the same way that, as if though they were still within part of this government thing.
What government thing are you talking about?
Well, one of my cousins was married to the governor's daughter there.
In Minnesota?
So when
Really?
When they travel, they travel in different planes. So the whole family, if there was an attack on the family, that the whole family wouldn't go down on one plane. They just they travel in different. I don't know if that's something that they came up with themselves, but anyhow, couple years back, they had left Amsterdam, and I think it was 3 different planes, and in these 3 different planes, somebody had stuck needles into the sandwiches, which my cousins had gotten a hold of.
Needles, like actually putting needles in them, so if you were to bite out of the sandwich, you'd bite into a needle?
Yes.
Ooh,
yes.
That's
demonic.
demonic.
So, yeah, exactly. So, I think one flight went to Sacramento, went to Minnesota, but in each one of these planes, they all had the same needle in the sandwich.
Wow.
And they immediately got off the plane, and
how did they find that out?
How'd they find it out?
Did somebody go through the sandwich for them and just check? Huh.
No. My cousins actually took a bite of the sandwich.
Ooh.
And found the needle. Well, once they got off the plane, they were immediately offered this AIDS pill. Well, what are you talking about, AIDS pill? What does this AIDS pill do? Well, it gets rid of AIDS. Well, how come the public doesn't have this pill? Why are we still discussing AIDS if the government has this pill that they're giving to their own people?
Yeah.
I mean, why do we have people out here in the public that have AIDS?
That's a great point, man. I mean, that's definitely something that could be the case.
Yeah.
They save the good stuff for themselves. Definitely.
Exactly. It's like the morning. I mean, we got the morning after. This is like the morning after pill for AIDS. That's my understanding. It's like, wow.
Oh, well, it's very possible this is going on. I mean, many people think it's definitely going on. That goes with cancer and any other kind of disease that they already figured out how to cure it. They already have the cure. They don't give it out because big business is not you being well. If everybody's healed of disease and illness, there's no money, there's no profit.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you got to keep somebody,
that's one thing you should touch on with Renaissance Ted. I've had lots of conversations with them about different drugs on the market. There's a cure for alcoholism.
Really?
Ask Ted about it.
Yeah, it's called putting the bottle down. Hold on. I got to take a drink here. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, alcoholism is a real thing. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and downplay that. That was terrible of me, but I'm sure they have a cure for everything, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the alcohol thing, and I did get my wife on this medication because it would help with brain cancer, and I discovered a lot of things about it where our government and the FDA has done nothing but try, including not just the government, but Alcoholics Anonymous and all those, rehabs and stuff. They will not let this drug come in, and if you're one of the people that are fortunate to get on it, they'll kick you out of the program if you decide to discuss it.
Really? And, so you signed some kind of non-disclosure agreement or something, I guess? Huh.
No, not that I know. I mean, it turned out my wife had brain cancer for 10 plus years, and the doctors had always treated it as she had like a sinus infection or something like that. Jeez. And it wasn't until she started, having stroke-like symptoms that I finally convinced the doctor that there was something more going on.
Did you guys ever think about trying marijuana?
We got into the CBD oils.
The CBD oil? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because where we were living, it wasn't legal.
Right, yeah.
And which was a shame, because, I'd hear about Phoenix Tears.
Well, I don't know much about it myself. Yeah, I don't know much about it at all. I know it's kind of, people talk about the CBD oil. I think that's something that can't even get you high. Is that correct? But they still ban it across the country. Yeah,
it can't get you high. I think it's a female strain. I don't know a whole lot about marijuana.
I don't either, but I know
that wasn't my thing. Mine was probably the Breaking Bad type area.
Oh gosh, let's not go into that. Jeez.
Yeah, but
you're spending too much time at El Poco Loco with Joey.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, no, those days are long since passed, and
yeah.
You know, but I mean, back to the cure for alcoholism. One of the stars from Battlestar Galactica had stumbled across this. She wrote a whole book on it. I forgot what her name was. Yeah, and so, you know, I kind of looked at it because, like I said, my wife was suffering from what we thought was alcoholism, which ultimately, I mean, I remember when the doctors discovered her, you know, the tumors in her brain. She had 3 large baseball-sized tumors in her head.
Oh my goodness!
And in her brain, and the doctor said, "Man, she's had this for at least 10 years."
Yeah.
And it clicked on me that, you know, that all her pain and her suffering and the reason why somebody would be an alcoholic was right there with the brain tumors.
Wow.
Stuff. So now for me, I have to look at alcoholics differently. That hey, it
could be something more there.
Yeah, it's not always just self-abuse. These doctors are just making misdiagnoses all over the world.
Yeah.
Especially in the United States, in order to push their drug agenda.
Well, I think a lot of the problem also is that alcohol is really the only choice you have for the most part.
Yeah.
If you want to loosen up or you know, change your perception a little bit, you know, help the stress roll off your back.
Yeah,
drink alcohol. That's the only choice.
Yeah, well, I think that's what happened to my wife. It was the only thing that would make her feel better, stuff. Because, I mean, if she was this alcoholic like they would describe her and stuff, she would go for a month of hardcore drinking.
Yeah.
And then she'd turn it off like a switch. No DTs or nothing. She'd turn it off like a switch. And every time the police came over, you know, when she was doing this stuff, I'd be like, that's not an alcoholic. There's something else wrong with her. They'd take her away, and I'd beg and plead, and I'd say, look, you know, you need to, if you're going to send her to prison or something like that, you need to do like a brain scan on her. There's something's not right here. That's not an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And but I had gotten into discussions with Ted about these different drugs. I think he said there was like 3 of them out there, and the only one I could think of off the top of my head was naltrexone.
Right.
I'm not even sure whether Ted mentioned that one.
Huh.
But I got a hold of this book from this gal from the show Battlestar Galactica, and she had she said, what, you know, one of the keys to dealing with an addict is to treat them with dignity, where AA and all these alcohol places do nothing but beat you down. And the reason why they do that is to keep you in this loop. It's like a big...
Yeah, I mean, you have relapse and stuff, but...
Yeah, it's kind of like they set you up for the relapse, and I shouldn't say this too loud, because the person I'm with now she really believes in AA, and it's no, you don't understand.
You can't say it doesn't help all the time. It's definitely got to help some people. I mean, just being around other people that don't understand has got to be helpful, don't you think?
Well, you know, okay, I've walked into many AA meetings, right, and you know, with cancer and alcoholism, there's 2 things that they have in common. They both love sugar. You can't go into an AA meeting without...
Oh, yeah, they got donuts and cookies,
mass amounts of coffee and sugar. Well, why is that? Because they're trying to keep you hooked. They're switching one drug. You know, I mean, alcohol is sugar. It's an addiction to sugar.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
There. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, you start to realize it, you know, through talking to Ted and stuff like that, and then finding out that cancer and sugar go hand in hand. I mean, how do they find cancer? How do they find cancer? What's the only way they could find cancer? They inject your body with sugar.
Really?
And it lights up like a Christmas tree, man. You know, it goes straight to the cancer.
And I have heard of people doing that keto diet, which is low carbs, no carbs. That will kill
me
cancer.
On that,
but,
man.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, man, but it'll kill. But cancer is also an inflammation my belief.
Right,
It has everything to do with
yeah.
insulation. And that keto diet, man, it's been doing hell on my kidneys, man.
Has it?
That
not for
first time I
everybody.
got that first time I got tuned into it, it was, I think I was doing the 20 grams of carbs. Oh man, that's dangerous.
Yeah. Right.
So, I did my own research and discovered that and a lot of doctors and nutritionalists don't even talk about it nowadays. A good place to be at with your carbs is around 200 grams of carbs, and you'll still lose weight.
Yeah.
So, and that's exactly what I've been doing. And
I think we can all benefit from taking a break off of a lot of things. I mean, what's the saying? Too much of a good thing is a bad thing, right? I mean, too much sugar is going to lead to something. Too much alcohol lead to alcoholism. Too much of everything. I mean,
yeah,
So.
Exactly. But yeah, definitely. During the time you're talking to Ted.
Yeah, I'll ask him about that. We'll go over that because that's important. And I think also, like the one thing we're into that somebody I know has really helped them is kratom, which is like a leaf off a tree in Indonesia or something. And the FDA's really pushing to get it illegal, pushing the DEA's arm to make it illegal. And it's bizarre because it seems like it really helps people that have gone through this opioid crisis. This crisis we got in our country with opioid abuse, which I feel is started by the pharmaceutical companies. And that may be a brash statement, but a lot of that stuff started from pills that were made by pharmaceutical companies. Plain and simple.
Yep.
And now it's heroin because they, the pill mills in Florida have stopped. They closed their doors, and now everybody's going to heroin. And then it seems like kratom might help people with this problem, and they're really pushing hard to ban it.
Yeah, well, I mean, all that stuff falls way deeper. I mean, when somebody goes into a rehab for detox, and detoxing is probably the worst thing you could ever do for your brain. I mean, it's more damaging than the drug itself.
What do you think of apple cider vinegar?
There's probably, I mean, I used it for the longest time because I had an acid reflux issue.
Yeah.
And I found that ginger works better than apple cider vinegar. Yeah, like raw ginger, even pickled, any kind of ginger in a cookie, or ginger ale. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
I think for me it was more effective.
Yeah.
With the apple cider vinegar, I noticed that
stuff's rough, man. It smells really rough, and I'll take a shot of it sometimes. And that's comes from our chat here from Phoenix. He mentioned it, but
what I noticed with the apple cider vinegar though is if I ever stopped it for like a month or so, and with my acid reflux issue, was that when I restarted it, it would burn like hell.
Yeah.
And each time it got worse. So, I mean, if you're doing the apple cider vinegar, I mean, you got to stay on it, keep doing it every single day and stuff like that. But I turned to ginger, and it's been a good 3 years without any acid reflux at all.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, that might be a good suggestion for some people. This guy here in the chat's asking, is kratom like weed? I admit to total ignorance. No, kratom's not like weed.
It's. I think
he's like, what the fuck is
in Indonesia. Yeah, in Indonesia they would chew it the same way you would a cocoa.
Yeah, like the Colombians would chew on the coca leaves. But that's not the same as cocaine. Definitely not.
No, it's not the same, but it's definitely a lot more potent and stuff. And I think what they're trying to push kratom for heroin use.
They're trying to push kratom. Yeah, they're trying to push it as heroin use, but it's really helped people come off of heroin because it's a natural. I mean, it's a leaf off a tree. That's what it is. It's not. Some chemical that was formulated. And,
I think most of our or pharmaceuticals come off of a natural, and then they
definitely, they
make
tweak
synthetic,
it, right? Add something
in
there, and
stuff like that. But
right,
it's the thing with kratom is trying to convince a heroin user that it works.
Well, the difference it would have between weed, definitely weed's like weed would be considered a psychedelic. It's Schedule 1 illegal, which means no medical use because it's a psychedelic. Most of your psychedelics are Schedule 1 illegal, whereas things like crystal meth, they're not Schedule 1. They actually use those types of drugs for what, ADHD? Yeah.
Yeah, that's
treat ADHD, use amphetamines or even crystal meth. I mean, look at Desoxin. It's crystal meth, pharmaceutical grade, given to kids that have ADHD. So, they want kratom illegal. That's for sure. I haven't seen anything negative from it. I think there is the potential for there to be some negative from it. There's potential for that everywhere, but
I think when you talk about plant-based
medicines,
homeopathic medicines and stuff like that, I think people have different reactions. I mean, like marijuana, when you talk about it being a psychotic or whatever you just call
psychedelic, mildly psychedelic. It's not like LSD or DMT or anything like that.
Yeah. I think we're really, really kind of talking about maybe allergies, or something like that. Because people have more. I mean, I know for me, when I tried smoking pot, it felt like my face was melting off.
Ooh, yeah, that's not good.
People would be all like, "Well, that's like an acid feeling." No, I'm having an allergic reaction here, dude.
Well, that's how I feel when I listen to Hillary Clinton talk.
Yeah,
it feels a lot like that. Similarly,
yeah.
But no, I mean,
mine was more like Bill Cosby in a dentist chair, like getting the shot of Novocaine. That's what it felt more like to me and stuff. And
you had to bring him up.
Bill Cosby, I love the guy.
Yeah, he's a rapist, man. He's a rapist.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And OJ's a murderer. There's something we could talk about. My belief that OJ's not a murderer, I'd be killed for that.
That he's not a murderer?
No, I don't believe it.
You don't believe he was convicted, or he wasn't convicted. He was what was the verdict? Not guilty, right?
Not guilty, and then he ended up in Vegas and ended up getting convicted on a crap charge of strong-arm robbery. And is that the way our society works? Is that, if you're found not guilty, we find something else and throw the guy in a prison?
Well, I think there was some...
That's crap. I think we should be shocked over that.
Yeah, but dude, I think there was some surveillance footage with OJ on that one. I think there was some actual...
The strong-arm robbery?
Yeah, that he went into some place in Vegas.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm not saying that I could go into Vegas and commit strong-arm robbery.
No, not like OJ.
Robbery. Yeah, I mean, he got the book thrown at him. Somebody else might go in there and he'd get a lesser charge. I mean, our society has just gotten so messed up. I mean, to the point where you go back to Rodney King or Casey Anthony and stuff like that, and the judges and lawyers aren't even doing the work. It's society doing the work.
Yeah.
Basically, society's deciding whether you're guilty. If we live in a country like that's scary. That's scary because we're supposed to be able to depend on our judicial system.
Well, the jury still decides. And I mean, but the problem is this corruption we see in our government. You see this corruption in our government where these people, we know they've broken some laws. I mean, how many people know that Hillary deleted emails and did all this stuff, and she's still running around going to these big dinners, and it's not even.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing with Hillary. I mean, basically, we got a society that's running around here that's doing the judge. I mean, our judges are swayed by the popularity of what the people think.
Yeah.
And stuff. I mean, go back to Casey Anthony. I don't really believe she killed that little girl. I think she made a mistake, and the little girl died in the bathtub, and she took the little girl out to the woods and put her out in the woods and stuff like that. I think what she should have been convicted of is tampering with the body. No, really, I think she was tampering with the body. I think she accidentally killed her. That's my thought.
Yeah, well, we can all have
but
our
everybody
thoughts.
else wanted to see her fried.
These are a lot of trials that have garnered huge media attention, like the OJ thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
there's a lot of worse things going on.
Yeah,
you know.
But what happens, But what happens is, it's just like the OJ case is where the prosecutor sits back and says, "Oh well, I got the people behind me, and I don't really have to do my job," and that's what happens, and then you end up coming out with the wrong.
Yeah,
I mean, I think we as the people should just shut up and listen to.
I think juries have certain things that I don't think they can even watch the news. Can you? What do you think, GOP people? I don't know.
I don't think they can.
I don't think they can be.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
How in
today's society,
they're probably surfing GLP when they're
telling me that. You're telling me that they're locking up these jurors in a Motel 6 and they're not getting any information.
They're probably on their phones checking GLP when they're in the back room deciding.
Exactly. You got to lock them up at Guantanamo Bay before I believe that story.
Yeah. Right. Well, the thing with the kratom thing, which is funny, is they've been pushing this. What is it? Salmonella, saying that kratom is being that it can, some of it's tainted with salmonella, and people are getting sick, and and I mean, this is just the media's job. Whenever you see the media trying to scare you, you gotta sit there and think for a minute. Okay, this has happened before. The media is trying to scare me for some reason. What's the reason? Is it because they care about me? Are they trying to scare me because they care about me? Or are they trying to scare me for an agenda? It's usually for an agenda. We know that, right?
Oh, exactly. Just like this morning, I got in a discussion about the avocado seed that you could grind it up, and this person turned around and said, "Well, that's not FDA approved." What?
Well,
Wait a minute.
Because the FDA cares about you. They don't want you doing some voodoo, backwoods, third world shit, country magic.
Well, the thing is, we already know that the apricot seed and the apple seed contain an arsenic that fights cancer. We already know that.
Yeah.
But in the United States, you're not allowed to use it. If they catch you buying a bag full of apricot seeds, you go to prison.
Whoa.
Apricot seeds? Are you kidding me?
Apricot seeds are illegal? You sure about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they want.
Maybe we should fact check this with CNN real quick.
Yeah.
Ask them if we can read the WikiLeaks.
I know they're using them in hospitals in Mexico.
Yeah, well, that's that's really what's happened is a lot of doctors have lost their FDA credibility, or even maybe their license to be a doctor, and have to go to third world countries in order to implement this. I guess you would call it some kind of their treatment for these diseases like cancer, right? That they like one guy I think uses sodium bicarbonate, which is baking soda, to attack cancer cells. He can't do it here. That's FDA. Yeah. I don't think they approve.
Yeah,
that.
That's something that I think the German scientists, which is another thing. You go back to the days of Hitler and stuff, and you think about all those scientists that got into the United States. Well, all these doctors that Hitler had that figured out the cure for cancer. Name's Warburg. He figured out the cure for cancer through having an alkaline body.
Yeah.
Well, he wasn't allowed in the United States.
Right.
Well, what the hell? Okay. Well, he wasn't creating weapons of mass destruction. He was solving a problem.
Yeah.
And they basically turned him into a criminal, which, I mean, of course, most of them were criminals, I guess, but I mean, he had the cure for cancer.
So we got somebody here that wants to ask you a question. He wants me to ask you what you think about police brutality and no accountability for police officers. About the story of this. Did you hear the story here recently of the woman who broke into a guy's house and shot him? I think it was a woman police officer.
That was in Florida.
Was it in Florida? Wasn't it? I'm not sure, but I think it was. She broke into she went into some house and she shot the guy in his own house. She thought it was her house. Is that right?
Oh no, I haven't heard that one.
So,
well, back to the guy's question, police brutality. My brother-in-law is a highway patrolman, and I love the highway patrol.
You like chips? Is that the California Highway Patrol?
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the highway patrol. So, police brutality is like, they give you an order, just do it. Just do it. If they tell you to give you a license, don't. When I get pulled over by a cop in Los Angeles or Bismarck, North Dakota, or Denver, Colorado.
It's probably hard to get pulled over in Los Angeles. I imagine there's not too many cops to people ratio.
I actually drove around with the expired tags. I don't know. Everybody keeps telling me, oh, no, they have some kind of system. But I drove around with the expired tags for like 4 months when I first got here. And I had cops trailing me for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Never pull me over.
Like, get out of the way, I'm going to In-N-Out Burger.
Yeah,
I don't care
exactly.
about your expired tags. Get out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. But when I get pulled over, the first thing I do is I just take my keys out and put them on the hood of the car so they know I'm not up to anything.
You do that when you get pulled over?
Yes, I do. Every time.
Dang.
Every time. I take my keys out of the ignition and put them right on the hood of the car so the cop can see it.
Does the cop smack you on the back of the back of your shoulder and say, "Good boy"? You take your keys out and put them on the hood of the car when you get pulled over?
Yes, I do.
Are you serious?
And that's probably because the same fear that this person has of police brutality is probably the same thing. Because I'm dark skinned, I don't believe in racism, but I don't believe it's a made up word, and I mean we've talked about this before and stuff like that. It's just it's a propaganda word. It's bullshit.
Okay.
Excuse my language.
So you take out your keys and put them on the hood because you're a dark skinned person that the odds that you and the cop could have something that spirals out of control are greater than say a white skinned person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Isn't that racism?
No, I don't think so because a white guy gets shot more than a black guy. So come on, what are you trying to tell me? Yeah. It's try to make the cop feel comfortable just as much as you need to feel comfortable yourself.
Yeah.
It's common courtesy, it's common sense. So, I mean, I'm not recommending that people do. I just do it because I grew up in L.A.
Yeah.
And I've seen it. I've seen the things that happen.
I just think that's bizarre.
So I take my keys out.
Yeah, that you pull your keys out. That's crazy. I've never even heard of that.
I pull them
very
out.
Courteous.
And another reason why I do it, Rich, is that if something did escalate, I mean, I know that the police car is filming me, and if something did escalate, the whole time you could see my keys on top of the car.
Yeah.
And if there was a jury that's
but what if you got pulled over?
They're gonna say the dude had the keys on top of the car. What's his business about he was gonna run?
Right. But what if you got pulled over and it wasn't a cop? It was some guy impersonating a cop, and you had to flee real quick. What if it was like Elon Musk after he smoked with Joe Rogan and he's just tripping? He's ready to, pull you over and mess with you. No.
I've heard about stories like that, and I think that's more of a woman issue than a man issue. I mean, for a woman, hey, pull over, call 911 when you're getting pulled over, and say, look, I'm going to go into the Circle K or 7-Eleven. I'm going to go into this well-lit place. And I actually heard about a lady that did exactly that, and she ended up getting beaten up by the cops for it because she didn't pull over right away.
Wow.
And it turned out to be a legitimate cop, and it was like, it's like with any business, people have good days and bad days.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
It's unfortunate. It's like today I was at a gas station, and there were people that were pumping gas, and everything was cool and fine, and then some guy comes driving up in this BMW, thinks he's hot crap, and he's honking his horn before he even gets to the driveway, telling people to move out of his way because he wants to be able to get gas.
Yeah, well,
and I'm all like, who's this guy think he is? Yeah, who's he think he is? Well, that guy proceeded to threaten
Joey
to
from
kill
Friends.
me.
Oh, he threatened to kill you?
Exactly. Yeah, he threatened to run me over and stuff because.
When was this?
I don't want to get it. That was this morning.
Oh my god!
The same time I was watching the crazy lady trying to get in my truck. It was the same time. My mind was more focused on her, and I turned around, and this guy's like about ready to run over some gas lines and blow us all up. So I screamed at him. I said, "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" He proceeded, "F you this, F you that. I'm gonna run you over."
Yeah.
Like, okay, whatever, but obviously he was having a bad day and whatever. And
he's about to take it out on you. Yeah.
He's about to take it out on everybody in the gas station.
Right.
It's ridiculous,
Yeah.
And make everybody else's day bad stuff. And it's the same thing with the police. There's going to be a guy with a bad attitude.
Yeah. Right.
We as people have got to recognize that and not try to escalate the situation. Because I could have, obviously, when I yell at the guy, I kind of escalated it for myself, and that's when he threatened to run me over. And
jeez, I don't know how you do it, man. I don't know how you do it out there in Los Angeles.
It was amazing because that was the second time this week that happened. So it's like, wow. The environment. I brought my dog down from the place I used to live, which was farm area and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And God, up there, she would take off out of the house and run away, and she'd be gone for half hour or 45 minutes.
The dog.
My dog. Yeah, my dog decided to try to do it the other day, and
there in Los Angeles.
She got about 50 feet and turned around and ran back to me.
Nope.
Because I don't know what's around that dark corner, but I don't want to find out.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, where I was at before, she'd run freely, not a care in the world.
Oh yeah.
Even the dog knows that there's something different about this place.
Oh,
yeah.
I know, and I'm not even close to Los Angeles, and I know I can feel it. Trust me, I know there's something.
Yeah.
I feel your pain though.
Well, see, the thing is one reason why I came back here is because when I was out to that really dark place called North Dakota.
Yeah, this is a dark place.
And I don't mean dark like it's dark. It's dark out there. You can't see nothing. So I walked around with a lot of fear because I come from a glass jungle. I could see everything around me when I'm in LA.
Oh.
When I'm out in North Dakota or Colorado or wherever those dark areas, I can't see. Somebody walk up behind me, they're going to get a fist in their face.
Yeah.
If I'm lucky, it could be a killer or something. So for me, I feel more comfortable here because I was born and raised in a glass jungle.
Definitely. Well, listen, you stay safe out there. I'm really worried about you now, telling me about these demonic possessed women trying to jump in your car and some dude trying to kill you. That bothers me.
Yeah. One of these days I got to get out and find out the real story of what's going on there, because I do have a bad habit of, when homeless people come up and ask me for money, I want to know their stories, so I ask them questions. Maybe one day I might
get a story out of it.
Yeah, I want to find out, why are you doing this? So,
all right.
Getting my face chewed off or something.
Well, we're going to go ahead and cut it here with you. I really appreciate you being on, Stryker, man. It's been awesome talking to you. Everybody here seems like they've had some good questions for you and whatnot, and we're going to go ahead and take a little break and bring on Ted. Ted's got some information for us. So, hey, stay safe out there, brother. Thanks again.
Well, thank you. You have a good night, and
All right.
Keep it going, man.
Absolutely.
Enjoyed it.
All right, man. We'll talk to
All
you
right.
later.
Good night, everybody. All right. Bye-bye.
So that was Stryker calling in from Los Angeles. Yeah, he's been dealing with some interesting things out there, it sounds like. We're going to go ahead and bring in Renaissance Ted, and we're going to ask him a few things, and I want you to stay right where you are so that you can ask him a couple things. And we'll bring him on in. How about you, Ted? You there?
Minor technical difficulty. My headset dropped out. Give me a moment.
Oh, you got a headset, man. You got some studio stuff going on. We got Renaissance Ted on the line, folks. He's our guest from last week, but we brought him in this week again. We're still working out some technical details with our call-in line because I want to have eventually people from GLP and Godlike Productions to call in, and I could talk to them, but I'm still working on that. That's a little more tricky than it sounds. It sounds really easy, but it's a little more tricky than that. So once we get that fixed, I'm hoping next weekend we can do that. But yeah, we just got off the phone with Stryker from Los Angeles, man. Did you hear any of that?
No, actually, I was listening to other things to prime the pump tonight a little bit, and I was going to listen to the entire thing in toto after the fact. Let's say tomorrow.
You go. Well, thank you very much. Well, hey, it's good to talk to you, man. How you doing tonight?
Not too bad. I'm up here in the wild north woods at an undisclosed location in northern Minnesota.
Northern Minnesota. How's the weather up there?
It is absolutely the most beautiful weather of the year. There's nothing to complain about at all. If you got to go here, it's a good day to be here.
Yeah, definitely. So how are the woods up there? I've never been up there myself. Are they pretty dense? Are they kind of like, I guess, is there a lot of, how would you say this, wilderness areas? Like just kind of like the areas in Colorado where you could hike back in the woods for miles and miles, or probably more populated in Minnesota, I guess, huh?
It's fairly low density up here, but you got your wilds, you got your civilized areas, you got a lot of little small towns. You know, the largest town for like 100 miles around here contains 18,000 people. So. Okay,
yeah. So yeah, me and Ernie were just talking about the situation out there. Like he's been running into some people. Oh man, in Los Angeles. One lady, he said she had white eyeballs trying to attack him, get in his truck, and there's another guy that threatened to kill him, and this all happened last night. And that kind of led us on to talking about some other things about, you know, just the mental health of people in this country and some of the problems people have with substance abuse and whatnot. But I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Like the mental health check of the country right now. What's your thoughts on it? Obviously, we're split.
My thoughts on the mental health is the mental health of the country is largely a byproduct of the intentions of the people who set the mental health of the country.
Right.
One thing I'd like to point out is that the entire '60s countercultural revolution and the inundation of the nation for quite a period of time, not only, especially in LSD at the outset, but then following that further than that into heroin, into cocaine in, say, the 70s and moving on through there. You find at the top of every drug cartel, every reporter who says they go to investigate, or every investigator who goes to prosecute. You get to the top of the Mexican drug cartels, you get to the top of the drug cartel industry, and you always come to a three-letter agency. The CIA is the world's largest drug trafficker. They probably always will be. The LSD engineering the LSD into the fabric of American society was a complete byproduct of the CIA's MKUltra program, and that's no longer in the conspiracy theory realm. That is strictly now in the realm of conspiracy analysis. The Church Commission tried to investigate this back in the 70s, and Alan Dulles went in front of him. He said, "Sorry, gentlemen, but we've destroyed all the records." You know what? But they forgot to destroy the accounting department. So now under Freedom of Information Act, we have the pay vouchers and the sub projects from MK Ultra that went out to Gordon Wasson, who originally started the mushroom explorations as detailed by Time magazine in 1958. Brought that into the culture, and Gordon Wasson, of course, is considered a towering father of the counterculture.
Yeah.
You have entire organizations. The Grateful Dead organization was all an MK Ultra front, and that much we have receipts for.
Last week you mentioned about a lot of the musicians from that time period. A lot of their parents were involved with the intelligence side of the government, right? Or they were involved with the military in some way. I thought that was really interesting.
You got going to John Phillips, the Mamas and Papas, his dad's military intelligence. David Crosby, his dad's military intelligence. Frank Zappa, his dad's military intelligence. Let's notably focus on, say, Jim Morrison. His dad was Admiral Morrison, the guy who actually engineered the fabrication of the Gulf of Tonkin incident to get us into the Vietnam War.
Right. That was a false flag. That was a false flag. Pretty much admittedly came out as one, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's been completely declassified now. Everybody knows now. Not only was it a false flag, it actually never happened. It wasn't even a flag. It was a matter of fact. A false flag requires an event. It was a non-event.
So it's just a Project Mockingbird situation, right?
Project Mockingbird was the CIA's dedicated project to take over elements of the United States press corps, infiltrate themselves into it, and you see that today. Anderson Cooper, he's a Vanderbilt. He's a CIA agent, admitted.
Right.
You have the former CIA agents, the former DNIs and everything like that. They're actually coming out as paid correspondents now in the media. So I would think that Project Mockingbird, if anyone doesn't believe that's happening now, let's just look at John Brennan as a paid consultant, a paid contributor to MSNBC, or Anderson Cooper sitting CIA agents as the lead anchor of CNN. These things are becoming pretty obvious right now. It's beyond the pale of theory. It is beyond the pale of deniability. It's just right there in front of you if you have the eyes.
Yeah. Do you agree with the president when he says that fake news is the biggest enemy of the American people?
Oh, absolutely. Every war at its core is a propaganda war.
Yeah.
If you don't control the message, if you don't control the propaganda, or worse yet, if you lose the war, your enemy gets to write what happened to you and why you did it.
That's true, yeah. Yeah, they do push a lot, and they bring a lot of their, I guess they pick and choose what they want the people to focus on, right? It's always been about that. So
yeah, absolutely. And you might see a dichotomy in the press right now. Let's just take the dichotomy between, say, the Fox News, the show hosts who have their own venue on Fox, who are pushing one side of, say, the government corruption narrative, which they're actually accurate right now currently. I'm not saying Hannity's always accurate. I will say right now Hannity's really knocking it out of the park in drilling down into the Department of Justice FBI corruption angle here.
Right.
The other half, you get CNN, and they're spouting off that, Trump is guilty of this and that and the other thing. It looks to me like all they have on him is apparently about 10 years ago. He might not have been the best husband. Not illegal, but not entirely ethical, but that really has nothing to do with my interpretation of his policies. And if his wife's okay with it, I think her opinion matters more than mine or more than Rachel Maddow's on that issue.
Yeah, has his wife said anything? Has Melania said anything? I guess I'm not.
No, she is. She appears to be a very gracious lady, is what it looks like to me at the moment.
Oh, they hate her. They hate her. They do not like her.
But keep in mind, no matter which side is telling the truth or whatever, this has taken up 24 hours, 7 days a week of the news cycle for about 2 years here. Whether that's the Hannity side or the CNN / MSNBC side, when you see that kind of 24/7 coverage, stop and think for just a second. Has there nothing else happened in the world in the last 24 months? Anytime there's 24/7 and it's on something for a year, immediately just put it aside for a while. It will be what it will be. Start looking somewhere else. Let's find out what's really going on here.
And where is that somewhere else for us right now?
Well, there's a whole world to choose from, but one of my favorite areas to look at is the complexity of the Syrian conflict right now.
Yes.
we got a wide variety of players out there, and I've been trying to figure out what exactly is going on out there, because we had the United States delivering weaponry to ISIS, and then Al Qaeda came in and shut down our operation of moving weaponry to ISIS. Are they not both Muslim Brotherhood? What was going on there? I really wanted to find that out. And well, it turns out there's a picture out there circulating of John McCain, and once again, they lionized John McCain, of course, but let's look at what John McCain was in that photo a couple years back. I think it's a 2009 photo where he was pictured smiling and hugging every member of the hierarchy of the leadership of ISIS.
I've seen that. Just to go off topic for just a second, did you see what John Kasich said the other day live on CNN, I think it was?
Oh, I did not. I missed it.
He misspoke when he was talking about McCain. He's like, John McCain he was put to death 24 hours ago.
And if they're going to put somebody to death like John McCain, if they in fact put him on a military tribunal and it became a media circus and everyone got to weigh in on it, 300 million people got to scream about whether this is right or wrong or what was going on, it would just be absolute chaos. If I were going to put to death a treasonous individual within the United States government, I would quietly place them in front of a military tribunal, and I would quietly tell everyone that it's very unfortunate that this person has caught a terminal disease, and then I would quietly execute him, and then I would bury them as a hero of the state. Wow. That's what I would do if I were going to keep things stable, keep the narrative flowing. It's not so much whether it's right or wrong, it's who's left that counts in these things.
Well, that kind of goes back to them. I think they found pictures of him and Hillary. They were wearing this boot on their legs where it was like they had a problem with their ankle or whatever, so they were wearing boots, but they would switch the boots from leg to leg, and it was like a lot of people were speculating that they were actually had some kind of device on their leg, like what you would, I guess it would be, what is that called?
Oh, I would say it would be a home monitoring system, and
like
not that I have any experience with that.
No,
but if
I
your
don't
home monitoring system, if your home monitoring system goes off and say your roommate disassembles it, they get really mad.
Yeah, something like that.
Not that I know anything about home monitoring.
Yeah, like a ankle bracelet type deal that they can trace you with and make sure you don't flee and go to some underground bunker, right?
Yeah, exactly. And again, coming from a complete lack of experience in the home monitoring system, I can tell you if they put it on too tight, you cannot do your job. It makes so you can't even work, you can't even walk.
Well, that would definitely explain his absence and the whole cancer thing. Yeah, definitely.
Thus far though, I'm still going to place that one in the theoretical realm. I love conspiracy theory because that gets the discussion thrown out there. But if I can't find anything to grab onto, I leave it alone for a while until it percolates and gets ready to go, because I like doing conspiracy analysis.
Yes. Yes, I love it when you do conspiracy analysis too, my friend. So, what are you on to right now?
Well, actually, it was a statement somebody made. They said, and this was a couple years back, actually, probably 4 years back. They said Barack Obama is a doggone communist Nazi. I thought, okay, Barack Obama's a doggone communist Nazi. Well, that's on the surface, that would appear to be a contradiction in terms, right? I mean, communist Nazis, they fight each other.
Right.
And Hitler, he had his brown shirts. They were the Nazis. And Antifa, of course, as we see them active today in America, Antifa was active in Nazi Germany. They were fighting the Nazis, so they must be good guys, right? Well, once Hitler actually decisively took power in Germany, the entire rank and file of Antifa simply switched over to brown shirts.
Wow.
They're both aspects of the same organization. And let's look at communism versus fascism a little bit if you want to check out exactly what those terms mean,
Sure.
There are very few people who can tell you what the aspects or mechanisms of a communist or a fascist government are. There's very few mechanisms who can tell you what the aspects of the Republican government of America are. We are a republic,
Republic, yes. Yeah.
People love to say, hey, we're a democracy.
Yeah.
It's like, no. Plato called democracy the final stage before tyranny. And democracy, I would encourage everybody to learn at least a little bit of Latin because it can be very instructive. Let's look at that word, democracy, mob rule. That's exactly what it means.
Wow.
National plebiscites where everyone gets a voice, right? Well, if you have control of the propaganda, you have control of the message, you have control of the movement, you have control of the action.
Yeah.
That is how you do it. That's mob rule. I mean, and as Plato said, democracy only lasts as long as it takes 51% of the people to figure out that they can vote themselves the assets of the other 49, and then it collapses into chaos. Democracy is very unstable. That's why we have a republic.
Right. Yeah, I remember I posted something on GLP once, and it was a video about all the news agencies that were collaborating to give out the same exact message, and the message ended like, "This is very dangerous to our democracy." And that's what the message was. Every single news agency from these local little Fox News places or whatever, CBS places. And that's what I titled the post as, and I got so many people pissed off at me. It's not a democracy. Well, that's just what the news was saying. Yeah, but that's what their message was, and a lot of people don't realize that, we actually consider ourselves a republic. Or what?
Exactly.
Or what we
can. That's our form of government, right? Well, let's break government down. That's Latin also. Govern, from the Latin to rule. Mente, from the Latin the mind. Government.
Yes.
Right on the surface, the word means control the mind. That's what it means.
Well, that's their goal. It seems like, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now, we're a republic, okay, everyone thinks we're a democracy. That's a bad idea. You don't want to start to get into that. But, a couple other extremely bad ideas, probably worse than either of those ideas, were fascism and communism.
Yeah, right.
Communism, that's the fundamental aspect of communism. The government owns the means of production of the corporations. In other words, the government actually owns the businesses, and if you want to get ahead, you simply have to show greater loyalty to the party.
Right.
Or accuse, that way you get put in a position of power. Or you just accuse the guy who's above you of being disloyal to the party. And that will put you in his position of power. In Russia, they famously said that 1 out of every 3 people was an informant for the KGB. Well, if you had a family of 4, where did that leave you?
Yeah.
If you wanted your neighbor's apartment, you could turn your neighbor in for activities against the state, and you could actually then receive their apartment if it was a better apartment.
Wow.
But ask somebody what the mechanism of communism is. Ask somebody what the mechanism of fascism is, and they get caught up. They say it's totalitarian. You don't have any freedom, et cetera, right? Well, there is an exact structure of those two forms of government, and they are laid out quite concisely and quite clearly in the Communist Manifesto, and then further on in the fascist documents of Mussolini in Italy, who, by the way, was greatly admired by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And these fundamental things, I would encourage everybody to go online. You'll get yourself a free copy of the Communist Manifesto. I've done it, and I've read it. There's some interesting things in the Communist Manifesto. For instance, the Communist Manifesto is a blueprint for a form of government that leads inexorably to top-down social control. That is why they designed it that way. What the aspects of the Communist Manifesto that I would think we should all know about? Number one, a government-controlled bank that completely controls the levels of your currency.
Right.
Well, that's our Federal Reserve. We got that in 1913 under Democrat Woodrow Wilson.
Biggest Christmas present ever.
Exactly. Now, what's another aspect of that? A Federal Department of Transportation. Mm-hmm. Well, that's controlling all travel, transport, and commerce, between provincial lines within a nation. That is right out of the Communist Manifesto. Let's bring it forward a little bit to Jimmy Carter. The Department of Education. When you think Department of Education, think Department of Indoctrination. Top-down control of what your students get to learn for 12 years in their formative years of life. That's a very important aspect of the Communist Manifesto.
Yeah.
You know what wasn't in the Communist Manifesto?
What's that?
Socialized medicine. Lenin added socialized medicine. He said, socialized medicine, this is the keystone in the arch of socialism that we've been missing. So these are simply, really, literally.
Isn't that Bernie Sanders' stance? Wasn't that what he was going on? Socialized medicine?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what Canada has a little bit, don't they?
Yeah, Canada's system is Medicare. Our Medicare system is just a direct template of Canada's Medicare system.
Medicare, yeah.
But interesting that you mentioned Bernie Sanders. He represents the Socialist Party in America, right?
Yeah.
And everyone thinks, okay, we got Democrats, Republicans, and socialists, right? That's a Hegelian dialectic. There is no Democrat, there is no Republican on technical basis. If you want a right-left scale, or if you want some form of a scale to measure government by, right and left is an absolute idiotic way to measure it. And the people who set that up know exactly what they're doing, that is in fact an idiotic way to measure it.
It definitely seems like a setup too. I mean,
yeah, just set it up as a sliding scale in your mind, from zero government intervention to 100% government intervention.
So where are you at on that scale yourself? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm
just kidding.
Very much a constitutionalist. Very much
Absolutely.
a constitutionalist.
Here.
You can wrap yourself in the Constitution, because the Constitution quite clearly forbids these federal control mechanisms that are very much a part of the Communist Manifesto.
Yeah.
And like I say, just read the 12 planks of the Communist Manifesto. You will see our government top-down departments right there. We didn't always have a Department of Education. There's no Department of Transportation under the Constitution. These are Marxist additions to our Constitution.
Yeah.
Mostly made by people like, well, we have Jimmy Carter, and we have Franklin Roosevelt instituted an awfully lot of them. The American Heritage Foundation is set up completely to undo the work of Franklin Roosevelt.
Jeez.
That is what they do. And they are the ones who gave Trump the primary list of Supreme Court nominees that he has worked off, that he published the day he started running his campaign.
Yeah.
As an anti-Roosevelt thing. But let's not hold the Republicans, quote-unquote, blameless, because we got George Bush, who added the Department of Homeland Security, the FISA courts,
yeah,
the entire
Patriot Act. So patriotic. Yes.
Now we obviously have roughshod misuse of the FISA courts by one political campaign to investigate and spy on another political campaign, which, by the way, was the first time that's ever happened in history. So those FISA court judges who signed off on that should have been very much aware that this was the first time this has happened in history, so why are they doing it?
Yeah, and they compare that a lot to Watergate, but with Watergate, there was none of this Patriot Act stuff. There wasn't these FISA courts. I mean, this is a whole different ball game we're into here, where they have
Watergate was a drop in the bucket. But the guys who broke in at Watergate are exactly the same guys who were implicated in the John F. Kennedy murder. Same exact guys. They did deathbed confessions that they actually did the Kennedy murder. The same guys who did the Watergate break-in. It's amazing how incestuous this world is when we start to look at it.
Yeah. Well, it just gets weirder the further down we go. I mean, but what do you mean by implicated in the Kennedy murder?
Oh, well, and you know what? I don't recall the names offhand. It's been quite a while since I studied
this.
Yeah,
but wasn't it just the guy that they found in some building down the road? What's his name?
Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah, Oswald. Wasn't it just him?
We had the famous two tramps who walked away down the railroad tracks. We have the man on the grassy knoll. We have a few other individuals, and it turns out now, I mean, if you noticed, we were supposed to release the last 80,000 of the JFK documents last year. They didn't get released. Why? Because the CIA stepped in and said, we got to not have this happen. However, a number of interesting things did get released by a little old lady who was a custodian of said documents, I believe down south somewhere, and the day passed and she just went ahead and started releasing a few of them. So we found some interesting tidbits, like the mayor of Dallas was the little brother of the deputy CIA director to Allen Dulles, and he was in fact on the CIA payroll as well. It doesn't, you don't have to go too long before you find CIA payroll with these guys.
Smells swampy.
Yeah, or how about the Boston Marathon bombing? Let's bring it up to date and just jump off on that a little bit. And you might say, hey, that sounds kind of off topic, right? Well, the Tsarnaev brothers are the sons of international bankers. Their uncle is a CIA agent. They were living in his house. The elder Tsarnaev brother was actually over in Chechnya trying to foment an Arab Spring in Chechnya against the Russians. Putin warned the FBI about that way in advance. So then they come back to America, and then they're having this manhunt where they're showing these guys as pictures and saying, does anybody know who these people are? It's like, maybe you should check the FBI employee directory. I think you'll find them right there.
Well, that's true, man.
Too far,
Yeah, I mean, that's what this whole thing has shown us is the not only the corruption, but just the inability of the Department of Justice and the FBI, these quote-unquote intelligence agencies. It's like your phone. It's a smartphone, but There's times where you can say it's not that smart. Well, what about our intelligence agencies? Well, they may not be, dumb per se, but they definitely aren't, in doing what they're supposed to be doing for we the people, right?
Well, that is exactly truth. And people say the intelligence agencies are working at cross purposes and nothing's getting done and Washington's in gridlock. That's the perception for the rest of us, okay? That's what this dialectic we're seeing play out in the news is for, is to keep us thinking that nothing's happening. Our government, our intelligence agencies, they move like a cobra anytime they want to. America didn't stay on top through an entire century by having a government that's ineffective. They stayed on top for an entire century by having a government that strikes like a cobra and keeps all the rest of us a bit in the dark so we don't know exactly what's going on, because a lot of that's pretty sordid stuff they're doing, and a lot of us disagree with it.
Yeah, so we're more worried about the celebrity that just died, or, this whole case that's going on, like we were mentioning the O.J. Simpson trial not too long ago.
Yeah.
I mean, that thing was blown out of proportion. It was like... There's nothing else important going on during that whole time?
Yeah, but let's back up just a little bit here, and let's look at fascism opposed to the tenets of communism.
Okay.
Fascism, communism, right? The government owns the means of production, right? Well, it's pretty hard for them to be real innovative. It's very much in control of the entire way their monetary system works because they own the corporation.
Yeah, no incentive for competition or...
Yeah, now fascism, a little bit different. Mussolini was the socialist along the same lines of Lenin. Lenin and Roosevelt both sent letters to Mussolini congratulating him on his ascension to office.
Wow.
They're all in lockstep right there. Now, the innovation of fascism, Mussolini's version of socialism, is, remember, Nazis are national socialists.
Right.
And, so how are they opposed to communists? Well, who's controlling the money supply? That's the big thing. In fascism, all it is you take the government regulatory agencies that were in place by the Marxist Communist Manifesto, right? And you regulate the bejesus out of all the businesses, put into place so many regulations that no one can get through them, and then from Capitol Hill, you pick and choose losers. Because they're so regulated, you can selectively enforce those regulations.
Right.
So only certain people get up. Now, here's what, let's bring that forward to Donald Trump's presidency. How does that play out in Donald Trump's presidency? Because Barack Obama threw into place more regulation than anybody ever had. Or at least more effective, I should say. I recall in 2015 when basically my oil field disappeared out from under me and I went back home. Things shut down a lot, right? Trump came in and cleared the board on thousands of regulations, just cleared them right off the table because Barack Obama was implementing fascism as stated by Mussolini. So there we go. Barack Obama, the fascist communist, kind of. It's still a little bit confusing, though. Where do these socialists and fascists line up, and why do they battle each other? Why is there a war on occasion? Why did the Rothschilds fund, who are Jewish, by the way, why did they fund Adolf Hitler as a bulwark against the communists coming in out of Russia? Well, we got two distinct parties of the totalitarians who've come up in the last century. And I'll call one party, let's call them the Rothschild Zionists, right?
Okay.
And I think I can call them Rothschild Zionists because the Rothschilds were the one pushing the entire Balfour Declaration. So that's just there. It's right in front of us. It's not anti-Semitism. It's just, who was pushing it? That was the Rothschilds. They were Zionists. We are going to create a Jewish state. That's what that is. So let's not get our metaphors mixed here. I mean, just because, we got a lot of bad Catholic priests out there committing molestation doesn't mean that everybody in the planet thinks that all Catholics are that way. And it certainly doesn't mean that you cannot condemn the Catholic priest for a history and an institutionalized history of molestation. And at the same time, not think the Catholics on the block's okay. So let's not mince words here. This isn't anti-Semitism. It isn't racism. But the big elephant in the room here is there's two Jewish movements that came out of the last century, and both are more totalitarian. One of them was Bolshevism, and one of them was Zionism, all right?
Okay.
Now, let's move this forward. Let's bring this forward to today. Now we have the Bolshevism represented by the Bernie Sanders party. And we have the Zionism, not quite sure where Trump is falling on this, but it would appear that the Rothschild Zionists are represented sort of by the Trump camp. And the Rockefeller Bolshevists are represented by, let's say, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, Barack Obama, and I would say George Bush.
Okay.
You know, so we have these two competing systems. Now let's look at our Federal Reserve. Who are the leading stockholders of our Federal Reserve? We have Rothschild and Rockefeller. Why, I'll be doggone, they sit on the same board. Well, how is that if they're battling each other for economic control? They have different views of how to control money in society, and the Rothschilds have already made their bones and taken over the monetary systems. I look at this whole thing as a challenge from the Rockefellers to try and ascend the Rothschilds, because the Rothschilds are the lead stockholders in the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
The Rockefellers would like to come in and take a little bit of that action away, and they have a system that doesn't work with the Rothschild system. Socialism doesn't quite work with capitalism.
So what you're kind of saying is that these two groups, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, they keep us divided in a little war pattern, I guess you could say, while at the top they're on the same board when we're talking about money, when we're talking about the Federal Reserve.
Exactly.
So it's almost as if their orchestrated divisiveness of us is profitable to them.
Oh, they can never lose by dividing us. I'll tell you that much. No matter what the division is, they cannot lose. But what I will tell you right now is if, in fact, the Rockefellers are stepping through Donald Trump, and that's a possibility, too. It doesn't mean things are bad for us. What it certainly looks like right now is the Rockefeller game plan, if it's being activized by Trump. For whatever reason, I'm not saying the Rockefellers like us or they're trying to cut us a favor here, but their version of the way this monetary system should work, the way they like it to be, because they're already in control right now, just happens to be lining up a little bit better with my economic prospects than those of most Americans currently. Because I'll tell you what, there's never been a socialist revolution or a socialist takeover that has ended well. The whole Bolshevik system has been tested, tried, and found wanting for the last century.
Well, yeah, that's just a great example of that is what's going on down south. You know, like I think it's Venezuela or maybe it's one of those places. There's just a bridge of people. I seen this article on GLP. It was a bridge filled with people that are just trying to get out of the country. The whole country's been destroyed due to socialism. And it's just amazing that we have people in this country that, you know, feel that, oh, well, they messed it up. We could make it work. We could make it work. It's like, why would you even chance it?
You know what I hear from my socialist friends? I give them 20 examples and millions, hundreds of millions, literally, of people dead. Stacked up like bodies in the cold in Siberia. Yeah. It doesn't matter how many dead bodies are behind each of these socialist regimes. They always say the same thing. That was not real socialism. Every time I hear the same exact
I'd
word.
hate to see real socialism, wouldn't you? If that wasn't really it.
Yeah. I would say socialism has been tried across 100 different countries, multiple different cultures, different races, different linguistic groups, different ethnic groups. Socialism has been tried and tried and tried in every possible variety that I can think of. If there's more, I don't want to see them.
Yeah.
But every single time it has been found failing. And they say, oh, the Scandinavian countries are socialist. No, they're not. They have free market economies with socialist platforms instituted above them, and you can probably run for a couple generations that way before the hammer comes down.
Yeah.
You know, but now, Sweden, they went socialist, and now Sweden is the rape capital of Europe.
Well, what I've always heard from those types of examples that the socialists like to use, like Sweden and places like that, is that their whole base was made with capitalism or capitalist-type societies. And now they're into socialism.
That's part of the Communist Manifesto. It requires a capitalist phase in order to institute innovation and industry that then the socialist parasite government structure can feed off.
Man, crazy, because that seems like
they're
trying to push us. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and now take this also. The Scandinavian socialist countries are right next to one of the world's previously largest totalitarian regimes, which is Russia, and they didn't have to have a military. Well, why is that? Well, that's because good old capitalist USA, what's left of our capitalism, was funding the entire military protection of their entire system. So you're going to find that, hey, if you guys had to provide your own military, you might not have exactly as much money as you want to spend on your socialist policy.
Right.
You know, of the socialist countries are still going bankrupt nonetheless. When Sweden adopted socialism, they were the world's fourth largest economy. They've fallen a few tiers down since then, and that's been a couple of generations.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a lot with like Trump's. He puts a lot of importance on making our own steel, and maybe even our own tech. You know, we let China make a lot of this stuff, and then we buy it back from them, or like we buy steel that comes from China, or, you know, what would we do in a situation where we had to go to war? Maybe against China, you know, if there was a threat. I mean, they make a lot of our technology, don't they?
Absolutely. And you know what? Part of this thing with the whole steel tariffs thing, since we just hopped onto this one here.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm
point.
just rapping with you, man. It's a good point. It's a good point. And this is a point that everyone needs to understand, right? We threw tariffs on Mexico. We threw tariffs on Canada. We dropped out of the trading agreement. And everyone's like, hey, you're messing with our friends Canada up there. You know, Justin Trudeau of the wandering eyebrows.
Yeah, didn't they burn down the White House?
Yeah. Well, we've been in a couple wars with Canada so far. So far, they beat us like 3-0, and so we don't want to mess with Canada too much. You know, as it happens, they've won. You know,
right.
I mean, be that for whatever it is, I'll tell you. But yeah, Canada's beat us in a couple of wars for some strange reason. But you know, here's the thing: is okay, we had tariffs that China couldn't dump steel into our country, right?
Okay.
Okay, that was already part of the deal, right? However, Canada and Mexico did not. So Canada and Mexico are getting Chinese steel. And by the way, South Korean steel. South Korea and China are the main suppliers of steel to the U.S. Yeah. Are they supplying us raw steel for our factories and stuff? No. How are they supplying us? They're supplying the factories in Mexico and Canada with cut-rate slave labor steel, and then they're dumping their companies, or our companies then, who go across the border into Canada and Mexico, can buy that cut-rate, bottom-of-the-barrel, slave labor-produced steel, and then, under NAFTA, with zero tariffs, dump it back into our country. Our steel manufacturers cannot even our steel manufacturers can't compete, even though they have to transport the steel across all the oceans to
across
get
the ocean and then across the border. I mean, that's just terrible.
Yeah. Now let's look at the South Korean quote unquote South Korean steel industry, right? All right, under the Carter-Clinton arrangement with the father of Kim Jong-un, what was that, Kim Jong-il? I can't recall the last Kim.
Something like that.
The previous Kim.
Just throw some silverware down the staircase.
Yeah, they said, here's a landmark deal. He's going to stop developing his nuclear weapons, and we're going to build for him, basically, a couple of nuclear power plants right there. Well, the deal was actually that he stops developing a plutonium weapon, and we give him a couple of nuclear power plants whose output is fissionable uranium. All right, we just gave him a pathway to a uranium bomb. Now, here's the other kicker. South Korea created an industrialized zone right across the North Korean border where they're using North Korean as slave labor, $1 a day guys, using our energy that we subsidize to them to provide their nuclear power plants with uranium to subsidize the energy input of a massive South Korean steel industry, which they moved right across the border. It's not really South Korean, it's North Korean. And then they were dumping that steel into Canada and Mexico.
Yeah.
And aluminum also. But, I mean, what's the main input in the steel industry? Labor and energy. It takes a lot of energy to heat that steel up, melt it, form it, pour it.
And that's a pretty bad thing.
We're subsidizing our own competitors. We're subsidizing them with energy. And the output of that subsidization is fissionable uranium in the hands of Kim Jong-un. And if our nuclear power plants are over there, I can guarantee you that our CIA is also over there and our Department of Energy is over there.
Well, it seems like
Trump had to go cut the North Korean deal. Trump had to go deal with our CIA, our Department of Energy, essentially running a ballpark up there from South Korea in North Korea at the behest of a dictator who we obviously don't like, who runs around telling everybody in America is a bunch of demons. You know, I mean, how complicated does this stuff have to get, you know? So Trump's doing an incredible job getting some of this stuff done. You know, I mean, be that good or bad, or be he supported by Rothschilds. I mean, let's look at our Secretary of Commerce, right? I mean, if we got two giant elephants in the room and at least one of them is not completely stepping on us right now, let's go with that one for the moment while we catch our breath and get our feet under us and get a real perspective on history and learn a few things.
Bravo.
Because everything just boils down to information. If you take your average guy on the street, you know, you've seen all those news things where they ask them, okay, you know,
like Jimmy Kimmel or the late night show, they'll go out on the street, and it's like, oh my gosh, These people are buying coffee and making decisions like that.
Yeah, and and this is ignorance. And ignorance doesn't mean that you don't have information. Ignorance. Look at the word once again. Ignorance. Yeah. You are ignoring the information that's available out there.
Yes.
And you know what? I don't feel any pejoratives towards all those people out there in America who have no grasp of history, no grasp of politics, no grasp of our own personal history, no grasp of what communism and socialism are. The entire educational system,
yes,
federalized at the Department of Education level, is designed to make sure that nobody knows.
Exactly.
Because if A, B, C, and D are the answer to the question, and you don't think to ask a different question, or if, hey, you're just supposed to get those, hey, everybody needs a grade to get through that
it's
stuff,
putting
right?
the blinders on. Look down the hallway.
Yeah. But, let's talk, that's problems, right? Let's talk about solutions. What do you do for a solution to that? Well, our current Secretary of Education is trying to push voucher programs, which is a good first step. But I would say every single person out there needs to take a serious look at homeschooling. There are a lot of resources, networks out there.
Absolutely.
If you can homeschool your kids and get them the real history, best of luck, and get out there and try to get anything. Because whatever you get is going to be better than what they're getting in the public school system.
Do you ever feel there's like a, I guess that would be called stereotype against homeschooled kids, where there's that saying, well, oh, he was homeschooled, he acts a little funny. It seems like there's always been an attack against kids that have been homeschooled, right? That they don't get right. That's organized, obviously. Yes, I mean that's just funny how this plays out, and where you homeschooled your child and they feel like it's not as good as public school.
Yeah, or how about this? There's one of the laws under Obamacare. A lot of Obamacare 40,000 new laws were instituted under Obamacare. Wow. And we came one John McCain vote away from having that overturned. Okay, one of those laws relates in a very interesting way to homeschooling. If you're homeschooling your kids, your local social welfare department can at any time with no notice come in and do a wellness evaluation on your homeschool children. And part of that wellness evaluation is whether they're indoctrinated properly, socialized in very general terms. In other words, if your kids think that we should be a constitutional republic, that could be construed as antisocial behavior, and then they could be taken out of the homeschooling situation before their own wellness, their own psychological wellness.
Or just taken out of the family unit altogether. Sorry, you're not raising the kid to the state standards. Because it's not your kid, it's the state's.
Exactly. Now, does this sound a little bit like late-stage Soviet Union, where they simply declared you insane if you disagreed with the government and sent you in for re-indoctrination?
Yeah. Aren't they doing that somewhere right now? Re-indoctrination camps? Is that in China? Are they doing that to Muslims in China? Or am I thinking of something else?
I'm not familiar with that. I'm not going to deny. I will not confirm or deny. I will tell you when I don't have information.
Yeah, well, I definitely can't, but I'm just saying. That definitely sounds like a step in the wrong direction. I mean, this is a path we've been going down for a while. So whatever Trump can do to turn around, I'm for it too. Like you said, whatever elephant's in the room that's not stepping on us, we'll give it a shot. It's just amazing how many people are like when the media says, "Oh yeah, well, let's hope the deep state's real and they tank the economy and make it crash. That would be great, just so Trump could fail." It's bizarre people even agree with this. How could you even watch that after hearing that? How could you turn it on again?
Exactly. I'm a Trump supporter as long as policies start to look positive, right?
Yes.
If he starts making policy decisions that I strongly don't agree with, I'm looking at Syria, right? He went into Syria first. He bombed out ISIS. He bombed out. He killed 200 Russian freedom fighters, but actually Putin said that was okay. So did Putin send those guys out there to get killed? But they were volunteers. They weren't Russian military. They were Russian freedom fighters for Syria. So it was kind of a ballpark gray area for whether these were Russian troops or not. But now, however, our latest. Okay, now Bashar al-Assad, right? With the help of the Russians, has been pushing ISIS and Al-Qaeda out of every province of his country, and he has pushed them all the way to the last province. Now, Russia, Syria, and Iran have set up a military containment around this province, and they are gearing up to bring down Hellfire and Fury on 10,000 Al-Qaeda troopers. Now, if you remember, Al-Qaeda are the ones who sodomized Chris Stevens, our ambassador in Benghazi, to death because he was getting weaponry to ISIS. And, his eyes were poked out. He was raped to death. I mean, it was a pretty bad situation.
Yeah, the whole Benghazi thing, that's another one of Hillary's crimes, I mean.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Let's not forget John McCain right there in the middle of the whole thing, and then, our usual suspects. You know who was fighting against him at that time? Mike Flynn. Who's the first guy they took out? Mike Flynn. What did they do? They rewrote his 302 statement to make it appear as though he lied so he could plead guilty to something, because after they bankrupted Mike Flynn, let's keep in mind the federal prosecutors have no limit to expenditure when they're prosecuting you. The federal prosecutors win 97% of the time, and most of the time people are found innocent of the charge, and they're nailed on a process crime, perjury, or obstruction of justice.
Yeah.
Now, Rod Blagojevich made those comments about Bathhouse Barry. Pretty soon he's in the hot seat. He is found innocent of selling his Senate seat for gain. He was found guilty of obstruction of justice. There's a fine line between defending yourself and obstruction of justice.
Right.
Martha Stewart, they said, she was busted in a case for tax evasion. Well, that's what they said on the news. It's not quite accurate. She was charged with tax evasion. She was found not guilty and exonerated of tax evasion. She was found guilty and thrown in jail for obstruction of justice.
Wow. Nice twist of words there, huh?
Exactly, but I was in advertising for a year, and the reason I got out of advertising is I couldn't lie for money. I mean, I went through an awfully lot of majors in college. One of them was advertising, and I found out that we had to lie for money, and I just couldn't square that. I couldn't imagine dealing with that kind of a situation.
Yeah, kind of moral decisions there that you got to make.
Yeah, and it's all there's truth in advertising laws. You can run right up to the edge of truth. You can even lie by omission, but make it sound like something happened, and you're still legal. That's not a problem.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing we see in advertising a lot, all the time, is a lot of what we see with real news or our mainstream media. It's almost like a freaking advertisement on its own. We're given the information and, told what the side effects are and why we should be afraid, right? But why are we supposed to be afraid? Because they care about us? And they don't.
These are not new innovations.
No.
None of these mind manipulations. These go back thousands of years. Thousands of years. I mean, these manipulation tactics with humans go back a long way. I mean, let's just go back to the famous Edward Bernays, the propaganda master of the 20th century. He wrote the book called Propaganda. And I would recommend everybody read the book called
I should
Propaganda.
Check that out. Yeah, I haven't even heard of that. Wow.
You know what? It's chilling. It is chilling to read the way these people think about the rest of us. We're the idiots. We're the goyim. We're the unwashed masses. You read the way the propagandists write about the general population, you'll find that they despise us.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of what I think the QAnon movement. Q said that a few times. That these elites, quote unquote elites, maybe even Trump said it. That these quote unquote elites, they look at us like cattle. I mean, it's the whole reason behind the word brands, right?
Oh, exactly. Now let's sort of wrap this back around to fascism, communism, right? Or what we'll call Rothschild Zionism versus Rockefeller Bolshevism, right?
Okay,
those are both Jewish movements. It's very important to understand that, the Jewish religion gave us Jesus Christ.
Yeah, but here's where I get confused with calling somebody Jewish. Is that a race or is that a religion? That's kind of like a gray area.
It is both. It is both.
If you follow, right? It's a race and a religion.
George Bush was.
Let's go. Okay. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. It seemed as if the computer just wanted no more of that. I don't know why, but we're back streaming live. Back with Ted. Okay, Ted, back to what we were talking about. Sorry about that, by the way. You there?
Oh, well, we were hitting the topic at the time of the Talmudic origins of both veins of totalitarian government in the 20th century, which we have fascism and we have, let's call it Rothschild Zionism, and we have Rockefeller Bolshevism.
That's right. Rockefeller Bolshevism and Rothschild Zionism. And these two separate entities that control, left-right type divisiveness, and then they're both sitting on the same board of the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, and your hierarchies in both of those parties, the absolute hierarchies in both of those parties, are followers of the Talmud, which comes directly back to us out of Assyria and Babylonia.
Yeah.
And the Talmud, again, people, hey, the Talmud, it's a holy Jewish document. Hey, go read that holy Jewish document, and I'd recommend everybody read the Talmud, the Encyclopedia Judaica, and the Judaic Encyclopedia.
Well, you're going to have to inform me, because I don't think I know what the Talmud is.
You know what? A rabbi online described it this way. He said if the Pentateuch, the books of Moses, the first 5 books of the Bible, the Torah.
Yeah, the Torah, okay. Right? The early
All right,
Old Testament.
Everyone thinks all the Jews follow the Torah. Well, hey, that's not a bad set of rules. I mean, it looks like not too awfully terrible. I mean, we have to update a few of them. Like, you can't stone people in public anymore. I mean, that's kind of passé, right?
Yeah.
But the Talmud itself, if the hierarchy of both of those streams of totalitarianism are incredibly racist against specifically Gentiles and any kind of behavior, including specifically mentioned child molestation and murder of Gentiles. It's okay to murder a Gentile as long as you didn't use the hammer. In other words, it's okay to get them murdered. It is explicitly said that it's okay to do so.
And this is in the Talmud?
Okay. These are in the Talmud, the Encyclopedia Judaica, and a rabbi online described it this way. He said if the Pentateuch is like the diagram of your furnace, the Talmud is like the furnace instructor who teaches you how to read the diagram.
Okay.
But the Talmud is a chilling document. Now you turned me on to the Eyes Wide Shut Stanley Kubrick Rothschild connection, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we got, what do we got there? We got ritual sacrifice, we got child molestation, we got child rape, we got murder of a Gentile. All these things are explicitly not only not forbidden, they are recommended, and they are considered perfectly okay if you're a follower of the Talmud.
Wow.
And hey, I'm sorry to all of our Jewish brothers and sisters out there who are unhappy about maybe this coming out or maybe everybody figuring this out.
Well, like we said before, all Jews aren't bad. It's just like we can say all Americans aren't bad, all black people, all Asian people aren't bad, but there's always going to be a proportion of them that are evil. I mean, you just can't avoid it.
Is our whole FBI bad? No, but let's get those couple guys at the top who are setting the tone, and let's get them out of there.
Yeah.
Are all Jews bad? No, but let's take a look at that Talmud, and let's get everybody knowing what's in that Talmud, because you know what? We need to know this if we're going to understand.
Yeah.
Right. And let's look at our entertainment industry. Let's look at our news agencies. Okay, Jews represent 3% of the population of America. Okay.
Yeah, but see, that's where I'm getting confused again, because I'm thinking about what Jews are, and I'm like, Jews, okay, is that a religion or a race? It's both a race and a religion, but it's like hard to tell. I can tell when somebody's an African American. I can tell when somebody's a Caucasian. I can tell when somebody's an Asian, right, or Mexican. Well, sometimes, but when you're talking about Jewish, I guess it's really hard to. Is it just somebody who's, if I go and accept the Judaic faith and I'm a Jew, now I worship Judaism, am I Jewish now, or?
Well, officially the racial lineage comes down through the matriarchy. It comes down through the mother. However, if you accept and follow the Talmud, or again we call it the Order of the Predatory Owl coming out of Assyria, as we see in the Bohemian Grove, that is the Assyrian Babylonian Talmud tradition. Now, when they were trying to figure out who got to move to Palestine in the 40s, that was a big question. Exactly who is a Jew? Well, the Ethiopian Jews who moved back, who were black, they were allowed to move back as long as they accepted voluntary sterilization. And what it came down to, what it boiled down to as far as who is a Jew, who's allowed to Palestine, what they said, really, literally, this is what the hierarchy of the new Jewish nation said, is he who is a Jew is he who says he is a Jew, which is how we get George Bush as the Jew of the Year, I believe.
Yeah, that's weird, too, because he was, wasn't he a Catholic? He's a Catholic or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, I'm not sure of that. there's another thing that kind of goes with this, all right? I mean, is everyone fairly aware out there that the royal family of Britain and the presidents of America typically are cousins? I mean, do people know that Barack Obama is Dick Cheney's cousin and Sarah Palin is George Bush? I mean, are they aware of this very much family orientation?
I've heard of this, but I heard it's kind of shoddy as far as how it's being. I mean, sometimes we don't even know who these people's parents are. Like
you want to laser beam back to where that started?
Where?
Laser beam yourself back to a term called Rex Deus.
Rex Deus, huh?
Yeah, Rex Deus, God King, right? It's a God King. Well, what's a Rex Deus, right? Well, every royal family in the European continent was started by Rex Deus, the God King, right? Huh. Where did the God Kings come from? The God Kings came from the sack of Jerusalem in 70 A.D. Wow. The Pharisee nobility who escaped the city with their treasures intact and emigrated back into the European continent, they sat there in the weeds for a long time, intermarrying with the locals in certain cases, and when the Crusades came around and they decided to move back, and again, this has to filter back through Fomenko's history a little bit, which I'm still aligning with my perception of history. I can't read a work like Fomenko's complete rewrite of history on legitimate grounds and not have my entire worldview shifting under my feet every time I talk until I get this integrated into my system. Well, let's just say that all these Pharisee nobility, who were followers of the Talmud, by the way, this comes straight through the Babylonian Talmud, which was a pretty nasty document. Yeah. That's where these people ended up in Europe, and those Pharisees from the original sack of Jerusalem popped up and became the God Kings of the original royal families of Europe, and they were in place after the intentional plaguing of Europe with the Black Plague, the Justinian Plague. These plagues didn't happen by accident. They were fomented. They were placed in the wells in the communities in incubatory animal carcasses in order to infect the entire community.
Jeez, man.
Plague has always been a weapon of the Talmudists.
Well, it seems like we got some scary stuff happening now with, what is it, the WHO. WHO. Speaking of what noise does an owl make, WHO? We got the WHO, right? World Health Organization. I think it was a lady that came out and said, or everyone should not be sleeping well tonight over what's going on with the Ebola, I think. That there's been certain planes filled with people, commercial airliners that have been grounded and quarantined, and people sick in the air, and it almost seems like we got another scare coming with some kind of flu-like disease or some kind of new strain of Ebola. A lot of weird things in the news. Of course, this is the mainstream media we're getting this all from. You know, it could all just be fear, but that's interesting you bring that up. That's always been a tool used by them, right?
Oh, exactly. Plague, and you'll see this. Okay, everyone remembers the pious Puritans and the Moranos who came over with Christopher Columbus, right? Okay, Judaism was outlawed in Europe after this whole plague thing, and it was outlawed with cause. The Puritans took over England under Cromwell, and it was a totalitarian socialist regime. I mean, Marx and Engels, when they wrote the manifesto, they simply codified the governmental structure that the Talmudists had already figured out. It was instituted in Calvinist Vienna, and it was instituted in Cromwell's England. And in Cromwell's England, eventually they were rebelled against and expelled. And so were the Calvinists from Vienna. They were expelled. Where did they go? They went to America. What were they called? Puritans. They're Old Testament Christians, but followers of the Talmud. So we got Cotton Mather and Harvard University right out there in Salem. You remember the witch trials?
Yep. Yep.
And what were they studying in Salem? They were studying inoculation of smallpox in Salem. And where did the smallpox blankets that took out the Iroquois nation come from? They came directly out of the Puritans. Okay, now Christopher Columbus came to the Arawak nation. What did the Arawaks die of? Plague. Half of Christopher Columbus's crew was made up of what are called Moranos, which are again Old Testament Christians, which are Talmudic Jews masquerading as Christians because it's more legal than being Jewish. And again, like I say, to the 90% of our Jewish brothers and sisters who are not followers of this Talmud thing, hey, no offense intended and everything, but we got to look at the Talmud when it says the things it says and it's being used and implemented on the level that it's being used and implemented.
You were saying that Judaism was illegal by the...
Yeah, it was outlawed in Europe because of the plagues.
Okay, because they figured
because
that...
of the effects. Yeah, because of the totalitarian effects of Calvinist Vienna and Cromwell in England.
Wow.
When they instituted basically what amounts to socialistic totalitarian control in those two municipalities.
Yeah.
Then they got over here to America. What comes first? Plague. When Columbus hit the Arawaks, what came first? Plague. Again, the Moranos were with Pizarro and Cortez when they came to Mexico. What happened first? Plague. It always goes with them. They always use plague as a weapon. Same thing with the Aboriginal Australians.
How do you think they start these plagues? How do you think they discover them and are able to release them so efficiently?
Well,
I'm not talking about right now. We know with the technology.
Oh, back in the day.
I'm talking about back then.
Suffusing blankets with the smallpox virus, basically soaking them in smallpox in a smallpox culture. I mean, we have petri dishes now, right?
Yeah.
So they had petri buckets back then too. These guys weren't stupid. They knew what a plague was back in the day. They had experience with them. Like when they would have Aboriginal heads of state meet with them on the ships when they first went to Australia, they would then, as each one left the ship, they would take a smallpox out of a bucket and paint it on their back as they left the ship. So they went all back to their various tribes. Smallpox, half the population of Australia. One fell swoop.
Wow.
And this is pretty well documented at the moment. And if you want to see some other documentation of some of this stuff happening, I would highly recommend, once again, the Unspun series. Holly Seeger and Jan Irving are doing primary research right out there in Salem. They're going down in the tunnels. They're going through the old libraries. They're finding the original source documents.
Wow, they're actually in Salem?
Well, they bounce back and forth between Salem and their home. Jan Irving, of course, is in L.A. Holly Seeger is in Maine. And they're doing great work out there, great primary research. If you want to see documentation, you want to know where this information came from, that's where the information, they give you great source documentation, great notes on every single dang thing they're doing. There is nothing theoretical about what they're doing. They are drilling right down to the source documents, placing them right in your hands, and you can look at it all.
Wow. Great.
Yeah, I consider myself a secondary researcher. I cast a big broad net.
I don't know, man. You sound like a primary one to me. I'm having trouble just keeping up with you here.
If I was a primary researcher, Rich, I would be in a library, in a dungeon, someplace studying ancient books.
Well, where are you now? You said you're in the forest, right?
Yeah, I'm in a pickup in a forest in northern Minnesota.
Oh, man. Nothing better than that.
Like usual, it is dark out here.
You remember a while back, I had found something. I think it was on Godlike Productions. It was somebody had found a pentagram in the forest in Minnesota using Google Maps, like Google Satellite View. Did I send that to you? I thought you said that.
I believe you sent that to me, and it's only
that was
40
weird,
miles
wasn't it?
from where I'm sitting.
That is so weird. Did you ever go over there and investigate? We should probably do like a live stream or something. Go out there with the camera.
Oh yeah, that would be outstanding to go see what that is exactly all about.
Well, we're getting a little too far here now.
Yeah, but if you look at you look at some of these signs, it's amazing where they turn up. The giant pentagram right there in Washington D.C. I mean,
Yeah.
If you got street view and you got the eyes to see it, the stuff's all around you. It's not even being hidden, really. It's just that it's called a normalcy bias. You hear everything you hear from your standard news outlets. Okay, there's 20 news outlets, all owned by the same three people. And again, we have 3% Jewish representation in the population in America at large. 60% of television executives and entertainment executives are Jewish, and a lot of them are followers of the Talmud.
Okay.
And they're strictly operating for one side or the other of the Rockefeller versus Rothschild control mechanisms.
Wow.
The Zionists versus the Bolshevists.
Wow.
And a lot of people still use the term Bolshevist when they're trying to describe their party. Now we got open socialists. I'm kind of happy about that because let's get the ideas out in the open again. Let's air them out. You know what I mean? Let's let everybody see what this stuff is made out of. Let's let everybody remember the 200 million people who died at the hands of the socialists last century. Is that too far back for us to remember? But one, as far as that goes, I mean, I'm not a big fan of hate speech. Okay, I'm an even worse fan of hate speech legislation because then we get into this this area of who decides what is hate speech. Are we going to have the Southern Poverty Law Center making this decision for us?
Well, that's something that that guy from Canada, he's a professor from Canada, he argues that a lot. He's got some pretty good points on that, you know, when it comes to hate crime and hate speech. Hate crime, you know. Well, isn't every crime a hate crime? I mean, if I'm going to beat your head, if I'm going to beat you with a stick or something and assault you, that's a hate crime, right? It doesn't matter what I'm saying.
You know what? Here's the thing. It's already a crime without criminalizing the thought process that went into it. I don't care what your thought process is. I may not like it. I may think it's reprehensible.
Right.
But you can't criminalize a thought process. You can criminalize an action. I mean, how many times have you thought crazy thoughts like, geez, I'm going to knock that guy out? But you never do. I mean, you think about it and you're like, nah, you know what? It's not the right thing to do. You know?
So we got a question here from somebody in the chat. It says, who controls the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers? Who's above that on that pyramid?
Ooh, that's a very shady area. There's a little bit of research into some heavy-duty names out there who are on a lot of titled land at the Vatican across the world. And I will tell you what, there's something up there, okay?
Yeah. The top of the pyramid, right?
Yeah. If you Google Rothschild and Rockefeller, you can get yourself a million hits on Google, right? I have a strong, sneaking suspicion that whatever's in absolute control of anyone who's influencing them from above them, I'm going to bet they don't appear on Google. I'm going to bet they don't appear.
No, not at all. One person in the chat room says Lucifer.
I won't disagree with him, because at the root of every single one of these ideologies, one thing you'll find with a that has complete agreement and complete mating with the tenets thereof is Satanism.
Yeah. Right.
If you look at the tenets of Satanism, they're out there. Look up the 4 pillars of Satanism, and they match up extremely well with the pillars of Talmudic Judaism, and they match up extremely well with. Okay, now let's run back to the Catholics if you want, because people are like, okay, these priests are bad actors, and there's only about 5,000 of them in America, right? All right, there's only 40,000 priests in America. That's like 1 in 8. That's not a good ratio.
Yeah.
Why are there so many? And now, as it's coming out, it goes all the way up to the Pope once again.
Yep.
And why is that? I mean, is it just a few bad actors, or what's going on there? Well, there's a book that I picked up one time a few years back that really opened my eyes to this. It was called Original Sin, The History of Ritualized Rape in the Catholic Church.
Oh, my gosh.
Because you know what? It's not just a few bad actors who get turned on by children, who get turned on by altar boys. It's a codified, ritualized fashion of committing an exact form of child molestation and abuse that leads to a programmable individual. And this was from 2,000 years ago. This isn't brand new CIA, MK Ultra stuff from the 60s.
Yeah.
This is codified, ritualized, and exactly perfected in order to create a particular type of individual. MK Ultra is just doing the same stuff. It's ritualized, codified, very carefully monitored and calculated child rape to create dissociation in children so you can program that dissociated personality.
Right.
It's not just about... It's not just about...
it's the manual for MK Ultra to... Yeah, trauma-based mind control. Well, they split the personality.
That's what LSD was, trauma-based mind control on an entire population. There's an awesome video out there if anybody wants to see the main players of MK Ultra all sitting around gloating and talking about the stuff that they did to us.
Oh.
It's called MK Ultra Reunion Party on YouTube.
MK Ultra Reunion
Party. And listen carefully to these guys talking about us, the unwashed masses, and what they're doing to us. This is Tim Leary, some of your usual suspects, Aldous Huxley. They're all in there talking about how funny it is what they're doing to us.
So Ted, we can look at this all. We can look at this whole thing that's going on. Me and you can dive into different aspects of this craziness all night long. But let's get to the meat and potatoes. Let me ask you. All this seems terrible. It seems powerful. It seems overcoming. It seems ginormous. It seems megalithic. It seems ancient. It seems intelligent. Can we defeat it? And who's we?
Good people? Defeat is a long-term goal, I would say we can become aware of it, and there are things each and every person can do, should do, would do, etc. Hey, the first thing is to gather some information, but let's skip gathering information. What can you do with the information that you have right now, as incomplete as that may be, right?
Right.
Hey, where can I go? What can I do right now with the information that I have in my possession right now? Like, you guys just disturbed the living bejesus out of me, and I don't know what to do. What can I do right now? Well, if you have kids, pull them out of public school, homeschool, and figure that out. If you don't have that option, start looking into how you can make that option happen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing you can do right now.
Yeah, that does seem like an important step.
Yeah, you know what's something that ticked off all of these organizations, all these evil people, all these evil organizations, these ancient, bizarre, dark organizations? They all absolutely hate the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah, well,
with bar none. And you know what? There's a whole organization out there dedicated to simply looking into the constitutionality of each of our legislators and the laws that they pass. Yeah. And that's the John Birch Society. Hey, go check out the John Birch Society, their magazine, The New American. And you'll see for yourself. They're on YouTube. There's John Birch Society videos on YouTube. You know what else you'll find? Is that they are listed in Wikipedia as a radical organization.
Really?
So our absolute, complete, constitutional, literal, the Constitution is the protection against Marxism. The Constitution is the protection against Zionism. Yeah. Foreign entanglements, avoid them. The Constitution is right there for all of us to use. And people are like, well, I don't have a law degree. I don't know what was in that law. Guess what? The John Birch Society has a whole team of legal beagles who are out there looking over every single one of these laws, every single one of these legislators every single day. They publish a twice-yearly report on the constitutional rating of each legislator. They actually list the law, the verbiage of the law, what is constitutional about it, what is not. You can hold your legislators' feet to the fire. Now, you want to hold your legislators' feet to the fire. A lot of people think, damn it, I'm going to write them a text message. Damn it, I'm going to write them an email. Guess what? Welcome to the trash can. You will go write the circular file. You know what these guys take notice of? You know, it's a superpower that everybody has, or maybe everybody doesn't have anymore. The superpower that everybody has, that everybody could utilize, if you can write your thoughts coherently into a letter, make yourself known, make yourself heard, put that letter in an envelope, put a stamp on that envelope, and mail it off to your legislator. You know why that's important?
Yeah.
There's a ratio they use in Washington, D.C. If you get one letter, that's 10,000 people who are pissed off at you. If you get 10,000 emails, that's 10,000 idiots. They're going to go in the trash pile. They're going to send you the standard form letter back. Get in there and actually write a well-thought-out letter that's informed about the law, about the decision they just made. Now, if you join the John Birch Society, they send you monthly action items.
Yeah, I'm just looking them up here now.
Yeah, and they'll look them up on Wikipedia. See if of the entire communistic system, right?
Right.
So you know what? When the John Birch Society would put flyers out on everybody's windshield that, hey, we're having a Constitution meeting tonight, the Antifa people would run back around, take their notice, right? They would reprint it and say, we're having a constitutional meeting, and we're going to figure out how to deal with the Jewish problem and those dang Asian niggers. They were saying these things and replacing the John Birch Society handbills with these radical handbills.
Wow.
And then, of course, because they're in control of the media, and the ACLU, and the Southern Poverty Law Center. Then they get listed as a radical organization. And even though they fomented the entire PSYOP, the entire mind screw that went on was all a top-to-bottom fabrication. Just go to the John Birch Society, see if you can find one radical word in the entirety of their literature of the past 50 years listed anywhere. You will not find anything that is the least bit radical. It's some pretty dry stuff. But they give you action items for every week. They will email you out if you want to be in the email list. They have their New American Magazine. They have their twice yearly constitutional reports on the constitutionality of each legislator. Yeah. And they get down into the weeds if you want to get into the weeds, but they also give you a rating. If your legislator has a 22% constitutional rating, you better bring that up to them. And that's all on you. That's on you, the people, we the people. We need to write that letter because, once again, your emails go in the circular file. You're spam to them. That's all you are.
That's very interesting,
If you write them a written letter, they take that as 10,000 people because they figure 1 in 10,000 might write them. They literally use the 1 to 10,000 ratio, and they take notice of a written letter.
That's to a congressperson or a senator, right?
Exactly, and everybody out there in North Dakota and Minnesota right now should be aware that Keith Ellison, a Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan acolyte, the second in command of the Democratic National Committee, is running for the Attorney General of Minnesota. And if you want to see some screwy stuff happening along the lines of what's happening in Washington with the Department of Justice, just let Keith Ellison get into the state attorney general position in Minnesota. You're going to see some hammers coming down in places where you never thought they'd come down, and it's not going to be good. So I'd encourage everybody out there to take a quick look at who's becoming the attorney general of Minnesota, since I'm in Minnesota right now.
Yeah, right, definitely. How are things in Minnesota as far as what's coming up with the election? How's it looking?
Minnesota's a little unpredictable because, Minnesota's definitely, they call it a purple state, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's because there is one bright blue icon that shines out at you like a crazy Democrat light, and it's right down there in Minneapolis, and they got about 4 million people down there. Yeah. The whole rest of the state can live and let live, but that little piece of the state down there, they're pretty much crazy. I lived in Minneapolis for a long time.
Well, that's what it seemed like during the general presidential election for the whole country, is that all the places where it was the population was voting Democrat for Hillary seemed like the urban areas, seemed like the big cities, seemed like the rest of the country, the rural areas were voting for Trump. These urban areas have a problem with this for some reason,
Yeah, but you get a lot of people in there in the city. And you know what? It sounds pretty good if someone says, we're going to get you covered, we'll take care of you, because people in the city are used to having to deal with a structure that controls every aspect of their life. You got your neighborhood association, you got your city council, they're all right there in your face. Hey, you got to pay more taxes for your drainage on your property, all kinds of bizarre things going on. So people are accustomed to this, you know what I mean? Yeah. You get out into the rural areas out here, you try to bring a hammer down on someone out in the rural area, you're likely going to be looking at some trouble. They always watch their step when they come to see you at your farm. They don't watch their step when they come to see you at your house in town, But you can take back your territory and your house in town, too, using the Constitution, using your power. But your power is kind of blunted if you don't know what's going on.
Exactly. Yeah, I think we all need to try to fight ignorance.
Check out John Birch if you're interested in stopping socialism, communism, Zionism, etc. I'm waiting to see, because Donald Trump was making some noise about getting rid of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is chaired by the Rothschilds. Our Secretary of Commerce is a Rothschild banker right now, and he's the one who helped Trump bail him out of some business difficulties a decade ago.
Yeah.
Is that a bad thing or a good thing? I don't know. Trump's recapitalizing the country. You remember when Trump dropped the corporate tax rate from 38% to 23%, right?
Yes. Yep.
That just happened this year, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's helping the fat cats. He's just in it for the business."
I actually heard somebody say that they were afraid that the government wouldn't have enough money to run by cutting the taxes so low.
I'm glad you brought that up, Rich, because there's.
I don't know. Is that crazy talk, or am I?
Absolutely not. There's something, and here's why it's not crazy talk. If you're concerned about the government having enough money to run, I would prefer they had a lot less, let me tell you. But let's just go with revenue projection based on the tax rate. There's something out there called the Laffer curve, Laffer, the Laffer curve.
Okay.
This is a curve that describes the confluence of the ratio between the income tax level and the government's revenue stream. And you'll find that with the Laffer curve, you're going to find that higher taxes do not mean higher revenue, for the same reason that all of us have been saying, hey, you take our money, we can't hire anybody else.
Well, that's like a lot of the times we find that the government's, they keep these failed policies in place. Year after year, these policies are failing. Well, it doesn't cost them anything for a failed policy. The budgets stay the same or they grow, and we pay for everything. So what's a failure if we're paying for it?
Yeah, strangely enough, too, most of them are unconstitutional.
Yeah, exactly.
You want your action items from the John Birch Society? Well, until they get taken over by somebody else, but that's pretty difficult because they don't have the kind of structure that lends itself to being taken over. They follow the Constitution. It's real simple. If anyone wants to come up with a committee that says something other than that, they're like, okay, you're not in the society.
Yeah, right.
Strictly constitutional. That's all they do, and they're very, like I say, it's a very dry group. It's not exciting sex stuff unless you're interested in freedom. In which case, it's stuff you need to know.
Yeah, I actually just pulled them up for everybody to see on the podcast stream on YouTube, and it killed our audio for a minute there. So sorry to all you that missed that minute or so when I was showing you the John Birch Society. But yeah, I think it looks great. I was looking at it. It looks very interesting. One of the things they're talking about, though, is this convention of states. Isn't that something that that radio show host is pushing? What is his name?
I personally would be very, very, very careful about a con. That's a constitutional convention of the states.
Yeah, that's where the states come together to ratify the Constitution, right?
Or to change the Constitution.
Right.
Our Constitution is just fine. If you start a con, you got radio hosts who are pushing for a constitutional convention. In our current environment in this country where we have the levels of corruption that we have, you are asking for trouble. We have a great Constitution.
I agree wholeheartedly. Yes.
And let's do it.
Yeah, and that is such a good point.
Yeah, throw this constitutional convention thing away because you know what? So much of that stuff gets derailed by bad elements with a lot of money.
Yeah.
What do you think George Soros is going to do if we have a constitutional convention?
Yeah. There's some bus people
the place
in.
Is going to be, the
Greyhound buses. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, and that's the problem. That's a great point. Is this not a good time to do this? Because I think also the other thing is the Constitution really need to be changed or ratified or whatever, or have something added to it? Or is it just the fact that we don't have people that interpret the Constitution as it's written instead
what we have is a bunch of people who nobody's watching.
Yeah.
You know what? It's ignorance. It's ignorance. If hey, the John Birch Society has the constitutionality ratio of every legislator's behavior. They have for decades.
Yeah.
And I just thought, you know how much stuff I study, Rich? I just discovered them last week. That means they're being knocked off YouTube platforms, too. It's hard to find. It doesn't pop up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's
never heard
odd.
of them. Yeah.
Well, I would like to jump back to Trump's decrease of the corporate tax rate for a second. So there's a side effect of this that nobody realizes, right? If the corporate tax rate is up at 38%, which is, by the way, the highest by a factor of 2 in the entire planet. Number one, our corporations can't compete overseas with other corporations, right? That's why they're doing corporate inversions overseas and moving their headquarters out of here and moving their factories out of here. Okay, here's another effect of having a 38% tax rate. If you've instituted a bunch of regulatory bodies at the federal level, the Department of Education, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Commerce, and the Department of you name the department, right?
Yeah.
And they make regulations, right? And the corporate tax rate's 38%, and these people are being regulated by these industries. If you have a 38% corporate tax rate, it just becomes absolutely imperative for the profitability of your company that you have a guy who's in there bribing a legislator to get a sweetheart deal for your company.
Absolutely.
Now, if you're a Fortune 500 company, you have literally $100 million legal and lobbying department on staff, right?
Yeah.
If you want to get these, if you want to get the corporations and the legislators out of bed together, which is absolutely imperative, lower the corporate tax rate by half, drop it back down to 23%. You've just made it 1/2 as profitable for any of these companies to send a lobbyist to Washington.
Wow, I did not.
You've just done it across the board.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It was. I thought it was a master stroke, lowering the corporate tax rate.
Yeah.
You know what happened right after that? American corporations who had inverted overseas, they've so far driven $500 billion of capital back into this country since that law took effect. And that's just been this year. That's why we have two new steel mills that are being built right now, 6 refurbished that are firing up again. They fired up the N1 tank plant again. And hey, let's talk about us over at Korea right there. Us and Prime Minister of Japan here. Now, Trump and the Prime Minister of Japan are getting kind of cozy lately. You know what Japan did? They opened a 15,000-person factory in Wisconsin where they're producing electronic goods in America again.
Wow.
That was $150 billion.
Yeah, aren't they making televisions there?
Televisions, monitors, screens, etc.
We haven't made televisions in a long time. No.
Yeah, and I've heard Apple is reshoring production facilities. I don't have verification of that, so that's a theory. But I've heard Apple's reshoring production here also.
Okay.
I don't know how much of it, but I heard they're building a few new campuses. Hey, you know what? This means jobs. This means people getting their self-respect back. You know, you can make a living again.
What else it means that's huge for people is it means that we could have a real president. We could have a president that's really for us, that he's not controlled. And that's something we can all get under, I think. There's still a lot of people that thinks he's a Russian spy. There's still a lot of people. I mean, who really knows? We don't know, definitely. But we can just look at the fruits of a plant and say this is good or bad. So far,
you know what I would say, I think I can pretty confidently say based on, I mean, all right, I drive around in a truck for 14 hours every night, so I have an added advantage over everybody else, right? Because everybody else gets to listen to the news, they catch their sound bite, and they get 3 seconds of a 10-hour deposition.
Right.
Under oath in front of Congress, and there's multiple contradictory depositions between people on Capitol Hill. What you're seeing start right now is what I like to call the circular firing squad. We've got Lisa Page implicating John Brennan, Strozik covering his ass, implicating McCabe. I mean, these guys are all starting to take each other down now, and now Bruce Orr is into the mix, and he's taking everybody down because he's not down by himself.
It's getting nuts.
You know?
It's getting nutty, man.
Yeah, but I mean, I get to listen to 10 hours of C-SPAN if I want to.
Right.
I can do it.
Yeah, you
right?
got the time to research.
Exactly.
And if anybody needs it, it's you. Let me tell you, because you definitely can bring it all together here.
Yeah, and if I listen to 10 hours of deposition and I see 2 minutes of this on any given news station who are trying to spin it in a certain way, I've got the whole 10 hours that I can tell them that they're not doing this right and they're not telling me the real thing.
Right.
You know, and this goes back. If you don't have time to spend that 10 hours studying this particular thing, you're like frustrated, like how am I going to get this? Once again, we go back to the Trivium method. And that's under triviummethodinstruction.com. Trivium method is a method of your grammar, your logic, and your rhetoric, right? And if you study the Trivium method, you learn all the logical fallacies, so you know right away when they're being used on you. How about a straw man argument, where you argue something to somebody, they rephrase your argument in such a way that it has nothing to do with what your argument was, and then attack that argument, and then you find yourself defending it, strangely enough.
Yeah.
You know? That's the straw man argument. How about the appeal to authority? That's a logical fallacy. This is right because the scientist said it's right. Well, anytime I hear that, I immediately take a look at that. I mean, go just right away. If someone's using a logical fallacy, and if you study them, you know what they are when they're being used.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, the Trivium method, grammar.
Yeah.
What is it? Grammar, logic, and rhetoric, right?
Exactly, and grammar could be say
a tree is a tree, not a cat.
Logic is what's the argumentation methodology being used, right?
Yeah.
Rhetoric is the persuasion that goes into that logical argument when you're trying to persuade. If you come up with a logical contradiction, you move right back, feed that logical contradiction into the grammar again, rebuild your grammar until you take out all logical contradictions.
That's so awesome.
It's a self-drilling system. Everybody should have this system. In fact, this used to be the foundation of the American educational system pre-1910, when the progressives switched us over Guess what? To the Hegelian system. The same guy who brought us the Hegelian dialectic brought us the Hegelian education system.
Yeah.
Came right out of Prussia. That's why they call kindergarten kindergarten. Why do we have a German word for kindergarten?
Kindergarten, huh? Yeah. What does kindergarten stand for in German? I guess I don't know.
I guess it's the garden of children.
Oh, God.
Kindergarten.
Yeah,
but it came right out of Prussia, Yeah. The basic idea of the Hegelian educational system is it doesn't really matter what you teach people as long as you teach them to stand up and sit down when the bell rings, as long as you teach them to line up and do what they're told. That's what the staff of education became.
8 to 4, Monday through Friday, holidays off, banker hours, pretty much.
Yeah, and you know what they wanted was, hey, you know what, when we ring the bell and yell, over the top, boys, I'm right behind you, that's exactly what the education system leads to.
Yeah.
We want you to shuffle out on that factory floor,
Yep.
We don't want you to be able to understand what truth really is.
We want you coming into the Amazon factory doing your morning chants. Prime, Amazon Prime. Did you see that news article? They were talking about the debilitating the conditions at these Amazon workplaces, Amazon warehouses, and how they make the employees chant certain chants, and they're treated terrible, and yet they have the
my
world's
previous
richest
wives
guy.
worked at Walmart, and they had to do the Walmart cheer every morning. I thought that interesting.
Yeah, Walmart, woo!
Yeah. Now, there's something to be said here about tying this back into what's another name for Jesus Christ? The personification of the Logos.
The Logos, the words,
logic. The reason, the grammar, the logic, and the rhetoric is a perfect.
The Trinity, huh?
The Trinity,
the
exactly.
Holy Trinity.
That was the original Christian Trinity, right? I mean, the if you live in truth, Jesus said one thing about freedom in the whole Bible. There's one thing he says about freedom, which is so important to us all. What's the quote? The quote is, "Knowing the truth will set you free."
Yeah.
And it doesn't say truth will set you free. It says know the truth and it will set you free. That means there's some knowing going on here. It's not just truthing, there's knowing. You got to know.
It's not just truth.
You use the trivium method. That's what was instituted for 2,000 years of education to teach people. And in fact, one of the most famous treatises of Julius Caesar, when he was describing his conquest of the Gauls as they moved through France, what's now France, one of the things he actually stopped to take note of is one of his centurions was teaching the trivium method to one of the slaves, and he threatened that centurion with being sent off as a prisoner of war to his enemies to be beheaded. And he said, if you teach our slaves the trivium method, they will no longer listen to us, and they will think that they're free.
Wow. Would you say the trivium method is a certified method certified by conspiracy theorists?
Ooh. If you're a theorist, you might not be using it.
Right.
I like conspiracy analysis.
There's
plenty of conspiracies to analyze.
Yeah.
But you know what? The conspiracy theories, that's my on-deck area, okay? When I hear people say things or things going on in the news media, every once in a while something catches my eye and I'm like, what? I can't believe they let that slip, because I suck in so many facts from so many different directions that every once in a while a couple of them stick together in a cool way, and you got to go look at that. I mean, that's why there's millions of us out here studying all this stuff, because everyone studies it in a little bit different way. Everyone catches a little bit different thing, because, if you want to cover something up, do you hide it? No, the best thing you do, flood it.
Right.
Flood it with information.
Yeah, definitely.
How do you sort information? You sort it with the trivium method.
Yeah.
You want to lie to people effectively? Reverse the trivium method. That's what they do in the preparatory schools for Harvard and Yale out in the east. Out east in those high schools, they teach them the trivium method as logic, rhetoric, grammar. In other words, first you come to your conclusion, then you find facts that support your conclusion, and you use logical fallacies to push it on people. It's a reversal of the method.
Wow.
If you reverse the method, you can lie to people effectively, and you can do it in a very industrialized and very codified manner. If you study it from grammar, logic, rhetoric, you can use it to figure out any time anybody's lying to you.
Yeah, and it looks like I'm just looking it up. There's some pretty good YouTube videos on it. I'd recommend people check it out. The Trivia method. Looks like there's a couple good YouTube videos of people trying to explain it. It's definitely a tool we could all use and have in our belt whenever we're fighting this war of false information. That's for sure, especially from the mainstream media.
Every war is a propaganda war. Every war is a propaganda, including the war that hey, Sun Tzu said it in his Art of War. The best way to win a war is to make sure that your enemy doesn't know it started.
Yeah. That's probably a really good tip, definitely.
But, a lot of sites are pretty long on fear porn, and they're pretty short on what you do about it.
Yeah.
And I like to quote.
Well, speaking of fear porn, what's going on there? Oh my gosh!
Actually,
sounds like
a trooper just blasted by my location about 75 miles an hour.
Man, he's going to get Hillary, huh? He's in a rush.
Yeah. I could only hope. Let's lock her up. But a lot of places are long on discussing the problem and long on pointing fingers and very long on fear and dismal and doom and gloom.
I agree.
Hey, you know what? Let's find solutions to this stuff. I think we laid out in fair detail a few solutions to what people can just do right now, what they can do today, what they can get out and get on, And you know what? You might have to go work your 10 hours a day. Do you have 2 hours a day? If you study the Trivia method for a couple of weeks and you just kind of learn it, you'll start to get results right away.
Yeah.
If you get into with the John Birch Society and just look up your own legislator, it's right there online. What percentage of the time is he operating in a constitutional fashion? If that's 25%, hey, write a letter, because they take letters seriously.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I imagine there's not too many people that write letters anymore.
Exactly, and they count on that, because you know what? If you've written a letter, you've obviously invested some time, and they take it seriously. That's the more important part.
Right.
They take letters seriously.
You know who was sending out a lot of letters was the Kratom community. Those that
Did they have success with it?
Well, they haven't made Kratom illegal yet, but I know a lot of people that were fighting the FDA and the DEA against this push to make Kratom illegal.
Can you tell me more about Kratom? Because
yeah,
I am
well,
absolutely not familiar
we talked
with it.
about it earlier with Stryker. It's just a plant. It's a tree, the leaf of a tree in Indonesia or something, and people have been taking it in this country, and the FDA is looking to get it, to have the DEA ban it. But it's really helping people with opioid abuse, helping people come off of opioids, so to speak. It's helping people. It seems like it's helping people more than it's hurting them, but the FDA wants to protect us all. Yeah, so I brought that in. It seems like a lot of they're writing a lot of they're writing a lot of letters to their senators and their congresspeople, the people that are defending Kratom. So, and I'm surprised because I thought the DEA was going to schedule it illegal as an illegal substance, but they haven't yet so far. It's been a failed. It seems like the government, especially these agencies, they never fail at what they want to achieve. And maybe you are telling us something that's pretty truthful with the letter writing thing. Maybe we should all write letters about all our concerns if we are trying to push something with our representatives. Maybe it is a letter that we need to write.
In this day and age, getting your thoughts on paper and writing a letter out there that coherently puts your thoughts out there into the void in these people's hands, that's a superpower. It is a superpower that most people don't have, but most people can develop.
Well, you just look at the way our forefathers and the people that founded this country and were involved, the way they wrote, how they spoke, even just John F. Kennedy, some of his speeches and how they spoke. It's so much, it seems almost alien to us nowadays, It seems like these people had a way with words. They spoke intelligently beyond, just the way they spoke and the way they built their sentences together with some of these words. It seems, it's definitely not meme culture, but yeah, we've definitely lost a lot of that.
Characters or less is not always the way to be coherently understood.
Exactly. Well, Ted, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. It's getting pretty late, but I wanted to say I appreciate you so much coming on and talking with us. Oh,
not a problem. Anytime,
Man,
Rich,
you are a wealth of information. You blow my mind. I hope you blew some minds tonight with some of these folks. And, I just want to say thank you. And Hope you have a good. You said you're on vacation, right?
Until tomorrow, I'm back in the saddle again. But,
okay.
Hey, is there one more thing I'd like to throw out there? Because you jogged my brain a little bit. This might take a minute.
Sure.
There's a substance out there called baclofen, and it's been around for a lot of years. BACLOFEN. If you want to see the effects of baclofen detailed, there's a book by a former heart physician. He's dead now. His name is Olivier Amiesen. He's a Frenchman. Olivier-Amiesen, I believe. Olivier Amiesen. Called Heal Thyself. And it's a book about baclofen. Baclofen has had a 95% success ratio in curing heroin addiction and curing alcohol addiction.
Wow.
And it's got a long history. You know, the only thing they could find in the 70s that made the rats stop hitting the heroin bar in the experiments was baclofen.
Wow. And what was the book called again?
I believe it's called Heal Thyself by Olivier Amiesen.
All right.
And this is, I have friends who are on this for alcoholism. They were terminal, but now they're not.
Actually, this is what Stryker asked me to ask you about, was this right here. I totally forgot about it. So sorry, Stryker, if you're listening. So it's called...
Oh, well, you know what? We caught it on the backside, because if you talk long enough, the best things come up.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
baclofen.
It's a multiple sclerosis drug that's been used forever, very few incidents of side effects. And if you read Olivier Amiesen's book, go talk to your doctor if you got a heroin or an opioid problem or an alcohol problem.
Yeah.
Get an off-label prescription as needed for baclofen. It's a multiple sclerosis drug. My friend who's on it pays $20 a month. It's cheap. It's off patent. But they've been keeping that one under wraps too, because they're trying to push all these other actually vastly more damaging, theoretically, quote-unquote, anti-addictive drugs that have an absolute zero effect.
Look at methadone. I mean, that's just a whole nother problem in its own.
Yeah, exactly. But baclofen, proven, 95% proof positive to relieve heroin, opiate, and alcohol addiction.
Wow.
Baclofen. Jump on it. Baclofen.
I will research that.
Yeah. That book details exactly how you step your dosage up to the proper levels and everything.
Wow.
And, they'll give you baclofen right now at the treatment programs, but they'll give it to you at a subclinical dose at 70 milligrams. That's all they'll do. That might be enough baclofen for a 4 foot tall person who weighs about, 82 pounds. Your average American, though, you just step your usage of baclofen up by 5 milligrams a day until you start to fall asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And then you step it back down by 5 milligrams a day until you start to experience addictive cravings again. And then step it back up by 10 milligrams and just coast right on that. And that'll get you through.
Wow.
You might be one of the 5% it doesn't work on, but the other 95%, immediate end to your addiction. And not just a dry drunk addiction, not just an angry person who's not using anymore. It actually reinstitutes your brain's ability to take joy in life and a blade of grass and the things around you.
That sounds like something everybody could use. Baclofen.
It's cheap,
okay.
It's easy, it's effective, and it has very low incidence of side effects. It's been used for decades for multiple sclerosis.
Wow.
So that's what I'll leave you with. How about
that's
that?
Great.
Get off the
that's
heroin
awesome.
out there, folks.
Yes, get off. Yeah, get high on life again. Wow, that's a great way to end it, man. Thank you so much for that. That's definitely
anytime, Rich. Anytime I can pull my semi over for any period of time when you need a guy to come rap with you until I run out of stuff and the well runs dry. I'm yours anytime you need it, buddy.
Oh man, thank you so much, Ted. Renaissance Ted, everybody. He's the man. Let me tell you. Thanks again for coming on and telling us all about everything it is that you do with information.
We'll see you later. As long as I have something to provide, I will provide it free of charge, man. It's all yours.
Absolutely, brother. Take it easy. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening tonight and staying up late with us. The Hidden Path Podcast brought to you by GodlikeProductions.com. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll have these podcasts up on some sort of platform for you guys to download. So, you guys have a nice night. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care. I'm Residence Rich.